Mikama Ariake, an 18-year-old adventurer in the Gurumheim Kingdom, finds himself expelled from his team by his fellow adventurers. Surprisingly, he doesn't appear upset. In fact, he seems quite relieved. The party's leader, Hurunoa Bibiya, becomes annoyed by Ariake's nonchalant reaction to being ousted. Bibiya, the party's leader, is a young warrior and hero chosen by the Holy Sword Ranguris, believed to have the power to defeat the Demon Lord, and he possesses the skill of a master swordsman. Bibiya reminds Ariake that he's being removed from the hero's party. Two other party members, a lady named Delia and an adolescent boy named Elga, also support Ariake's departure from the group. Delia is a female gladiator who can boost her abilities with magic, and possesses an unstoppable attack known as her Blessed Fist skill. Elga, who is popularly known as the Kingdom's Shield, boasts incredible strength, magic resistance, and the impenetrable defense of steel, along with the Defense of Giant skill. Another team member, Purada the Magician, bluntly tells the group that they don't need someone as unhelpful as Ariake. Rumor has it that Purada's magic power surpasses the Demon Lord's by 10,000, and she's hailed as humanity's trump card with her Arc Wizard skill. Bibiya sides with Purada, informing Ariake that it's too late to plead for his stay. Ariake, though, pays no attention and packs his belongings to leave, and this only further annoys Bibiya. The last member of their team, Alicia, finally shows up. She says she's been eagerly waiting for the moment Ariake would be ousted, thinking it's like a blessing from the gods. Alicia is a legendary saint with incredible healing powers, and she can even bring people back to life. She's not only famous in their country, but also known worldwide thanks to her stunning looks. Ariake can't figure out why Alicia seems to dislike him. Back when they were kids, she used to follow him around silently, even though she was shy and never talked to him. But as time passed, she changed. All the members of the heroes group, including Ariake, were childhood friends from a village called Rittenday. Ariake believed that their close bond is what brought them together as a team. Now he's being pushed out simply because their feelings have changed. Ariake asks Bibiya why he's getting kicked out, and Bibiya says it's because Ariake lacks special skills like attack or defense magic. All he's good at is protective magic for exploring and making antidotes, and Bibiya thinks that anyone can do that. The rest of the group takes turns criticizing Ariake's abilities. He tries to defend himself, but Alicia interrupts and tells him to go, saying the party isn't right for him. Ariake agrees to leave, but before doing so, he embarrasses Bibiya by revealing that he has athlete's foot. Before Bibiya can react, Ariake runs away. When Ariake was young, he dreamed of being chosen by an oracle to be a backup member of Bibiya's party until the time was right. That's why he joined the group. Now alone and no longer part of the party, Ariake decides to head to a town called Alti, a place they had visited before. He feels that because the folks there are friendly, he'll live peacefully in that place. While sorting through his belongings, he worries about his party members who always depended on him for inventory and preparations, because they're not good at those tasks themselves. He then admits to himself that traveling alone is enjoyable from time to time. Later, Ariake remembers how he was approached by the oracle, and told by the old man that he must assist Bibiya and his childhood friends until the time is right, to prevent them from dying young. Ariake recalls the skills he received from the oracle, which include strengthening weapons and armor, controlling time, speeding up or slowing it down, enhancing healing abilities, and the unique skill of using these powers. Ariake never attacked openly, he always fought for his party from the shadows. While most people could check their unique skills with the judgment option, when someone tried to view his skill board, it displayed numerous useless skills. To appear ordinary and not reveal his true abilities, he used his concealment to make some skills invisible once they reached a certain level. Ariake feels disappointed that he couldn't show Bibiya his true skill, but he decides to let it go because it won't change anything now that he's kicked out. Suddenly, he hears a voice in his head crying for help. He's surprised that someone can reach him even though he has his magic barrier up. The person mentions having an unremovable curse and asks Ariake to end their life. Ariake gets annoyed because this person just started talking to him and is now requesting such an insane thing. He firmly declines and suggests they find someone else. But the voice pleads for his help one more time, mentioning their pride as a member of the Dragon Tribe. Ariake, intrigued by the mention of the Dragon Tribe, pauses and asks for more information. It's hard for him to believe that a proud species like the Dragon Tribe would seek help from a human for such a request. He understands the voice's plight but refuses to take the life of someone he barely knows. However, he tells the voice that if it asks for his help, he'll consider it. The voice starts pleading for assistance, and Ariake eventually agrees. He begins his journey to find the voice's location. On his way, a colossal centipede attacks, but he effortlessly defeats it using his bug repellent skill. Continuing, he ponders the Dragon Tribe and hesitates to fully trust the voice. He remembers that dragons submit to humans when defeated, acknowledging their strength. This makes it hard to believe they would seek human help. Doubt creeps in, and Ariake suspects there might be someone else behind the call for help, possibly with sinister intentions. He decides to explore the area and eventually stumbles upon a sealed dungeon, surrounded by many lifeless bodies. He thinks that these might be thieves who met their end while attempting to break into the locked door in search of treasures. He ponders the idea of forcing the door open, but quickly understands that it could lead to unexpected problems. So he opts to tidy up and think things through. Suddenly, a peculiar man holding a spherical object appears behind him, advising him not to rush. To make matters even stranger, the lifeless bodies begin to suddenly rise. Ariake realizes that the object in the man's hand must be the necromancer's jewel, capable of controlling the deceased. The man confidently confirms that the object is indeed the necromancer's jewel, proudly claiming he obtained it from someone else. Ariake scolds him for resorting to such a petty trick, but this infuriates the man, and he threatens to transform Ariake into a zombie. The zombies move to attack, but Ariake impressively activates his restoration skill, using it to disintegrate all of the lifeless bodies. The man is taken aback by Ariake's formidable strength and inquires about his identity. Ariake humbly replies that he's just a guy who was kicked out from the heroes group because he's good only for carrying baggage. The man stands in shock, unable to believe that a mere porter could unleash such a powerful attack. Ariake corrects him, explaining that it's not magic but a restoration skill. This skill can return things to their original state. Zombies become corpses and decayed bodies turn to dust. The man grows frustrated, claiming he's never heard of such a thing. Before he can react, a zombie grabs him and pulls him down from the boulder he's on. Ariake warns that these crumbling zombies need something to replace their decaying bodies, hence the attack. He points out that the man used the necromancer's jewel, so he should have expected consequences. The man screams as the zombies devour him. Ariake decides to focus on entering the dungeon, but later he changes his mind and opts for his metamorphosis skill. Metamorphosis is a shape-shifting skill that can make you transform your shape into anything you wish. Ariake morphs into a mole, using its burrowing abilities to sneak into the dungeon without smashing down the sealed door, and he pulls it off. Once inside, Ariake is blown away. It's huge in there, more like a high-level dungeon, way beyond what your average mid-level adventurer could handle. In this world, adventurers have ranks from E to S, based on their fighting strength, levels, and monster slaying record. Most folks are ranked B or lower, but there are exceptions like Babia and Alicia, who are ranked S. Ariake, though, sits at rank C. It's not the ranking system's fault, he's just keeping his true skills under wraps. His thoughts get interrupted as two gargoyle statues in the dungeon suddenly spring to life. They label him an intruder, and inquire if he intends to unleash the Red One of Disaster. Ariake assumes that this Red One is probably the dragon that summoned him there. Noticing that Ariake has no intention of leaving, the gargoyles advance to attack. Ariake observes their incredible speed and apparent strength, enough to lay waste to an entire country. However, when they get close, Ariake activates a skill called Atmosphere Manipulation, which turns the air into an impenetrable barrier. Consequently, their attacks cannot reach him. Nevertheless, one gargoyle manages to break through the invisible wall. As they continue their assault, they suddenly discover that Ariake has vanished. He reappears behind one of the gargoyles, clicking his tongue at them, and questions how they fell for such a basic trap. Before the gargoyle can react, Ariake swiftly beheads it with a powerful chop, sending its head flying. Surprised, the second gargoyle hastily retreats into the air, and nervously questions Ariake about how he managed to defeat a guardian so quickly. Ariake replies, saying that just because these creatures look down on humans, it doesn't mean they're superior. He goes on to tease the gargoyle, provoking it to attack. However, as it lunges, the attack starts affecting the gargoyle itself, not Ariake. Ariake clarifies that during the first attack, he utilized atmosphere manipulation, which created an illusionary atmospheric wall, tricking them into believing they had a chance to strike. Then he used this illusion to counter their attack. He reveals that he had control from the very beginning. Finally, the gargoyle disintegrates. Ariake continues deeper into the dungeon, recalling that dungeons are akin to living beings with their own minds. They send monsters when intruders appear, attempting to absorb their magic and bodies to grow stronger. They also use treasure chests as bait to lure intruders, but those chests are actually traps. As Ariake ventures deeper, he enters an incredibly spacious area, and a few minutes later he discovers why it's so vast. It turns out there is a massive golem monster in that section of the dungeon, and the area is spacious enough to allow the golem to move freely. The golem attacks with astonishing speed, but Ariake manages to dodge it. Unfortunately, he soon realizes it's not just one golem. There are 3 of them. Ariake reflects on how Babia used to tease him for being a C-rank adventurer, and how he and Alicia used to boast about their ability to battle formidable creatures like golems. They never believed someone as seemingly weak as Ariake could defeat one. Now, Ariake is determined to prove them wrong. He places a magic seal on all 3 golems, and they suddenly explode with a single spell. With that task accomplished, Ariake continues moving forward and unlocks a massive door. He believes the person who summoned him might be inside. Upon entering, a man greets him and reveals that no one has reached this part of the dungeon in 1,000 years. He asks Ariake for his name, but Ariake fires back, asking the man who he is instead. The man yells at him for being rude, but still introduces himself as the high priest of the dungeon. Ariake told him he was in a hurry and asked the priest to bring the person who had called him. The man finds it amusing that someone could summon Ariake for help, guessing that the dungeon's barrier had weakened over the years. The man then informs Ariake that he is prepared in an inescapable dungeon. Although Ariake had made it this far, the man assured him that he must have used up his strength fighting other monsters. However, the man was shocked when Ariake revealed that he was completely unharmed and had barely taken any damage. This surprised the man even more because he believed that no one could face the mighty golems and come out unscathed, let alone defeat them with a single blow. Ariake admitted that the golems were indeed dangerous, but he managed to destroy them with just one strike, leaving the man astounded. Ariake explains that earlier he used a skill called magic amplification. Golems are incredibly complex creatures with intricate magic nerves and a very complex magic flow within them. However, they have a vulnerability. If external magic enters them, their balance breaks and their magic nerves go haywire, causing them to explode from the inside. The priest still can't believe Ariake defeated not just 1, but 3 golems in a single blow. These golems could resist even the combined magical power of the entire country. The priest is now deeply impressed with Ariake, and suggests that he become a vessel for him to evolve into a god capable of controlling everything. Ariake once more asks the priest to reveal the person who had summoned him. While searching, Ariake stumbles upon a giant crystal. As he peeks inside, he finds a girl trapped within. The priest explains that this girl was the daughter of the Geshpent dragon, intended for use in a ritual to help him evolve into a god. Ariake scolds the priest for locking up a very young girl for a long time, saying that no matter what she is, it's a terrible deed. He also points out that the priest isn't a genius, but just a common criminal. When the priest questions why he's called a criminal for capturing a single dragon, Ariake explains that capturing anything, be it a dragon or a cat, is wrong. He even makes fun of the priest, saying that someone like him who wants to become a god won't grasp such a simple concept. This mockery angers the priest, and he shoots a blast from his scepter at Ariake. Ariake defends himself with a protective barrier, but he still gets caught in the explosion. The priest, thinking he's won, taunts Ariake. However, suddenly a small stone strikes the priest's cheek just inches from his eye, causing him great pain. When the smoke clears, Ariake reveals himself to be completely unharmed. Ariake expressed surprise to the priest, thinking he would be stronger after absorbing dragon energy. But he's amazed that this is all the power that the priest has gained. This makes the priest even angrier, and he aims his scepter at the crystal, threatening to harm the dragon girl if Ariake resists. Ariake, not wanting harm to befall the girl, tells the priest he'll cancel his magic. The priest agrees and Ariake deactivates his magic. The priest tries to attack, but to his shock, the crystal containing the girl shatters, a pebble piercing his arm. He wonders why the strong crystal broke so easily. Ariake explains that his nullification skill affects not only his magic, but others too. Ariake decides to shatter the crystal, even though the man warns him it's unbreakable. Surprisingly, Ariake effortlessly breaks it. He catches the girl and gently places her on the floor, and she wakes up quickly, relieved to see him. She didn't think he would save her after she reached out to him mentally. Ariake uses his judgment to check her health, but she pushes him away, saying she has nothing to repay him even though he rescued her. Ariake reassures her that he doesn't expect anything in return. The dragon finally spots the priest and grows furious. She yells at him for imprisoning her and stealing her power for 1,000 years. She tries to attack him but ends up falling to the floor. Ariake tells her that she's still weak from being in stasis for so long. The dragon girl starts to pout, and complains about feeling really useless. Ariake asks her why she thinks that way, and she explains that she'll tell him because he saved her. She admits that for a baby from the dragon tribe to be called a dragon, they need to have 4 powers: longevity, regeneration, destructive power, and sky domination. These are the things that make a dragon. Unfortunately, her powers have been taken away from her. She goes on to say that she's the daughter of the Dragon King, but she was a failure because her 4 powers were very weak. She couldn't even turn into a huge dragon. She stayed the size of a regular human and couldn't use magic very well. Because of this, she was kicked out of her country because she brought shame to the royal lineage, and she was later captured and had her powers taken away. She concludes that even though her powers were weak, they were still stolen from her, which means she is no longer a dragon. Overwhelmed by shame, she pleads with Ariake to end her life, as she can't bear to exist like this any longer. Instead, Ariake playfully taps her head with his fingers, causing her to yelp. He reminds her that he had earlier promised not to harm her, but to assist her. Gently patting her head, he evokes strong emotions within her. Through teary eyes, she confides in him, admitting that her powers are beyond recovery, and even if they were to return, she would remain weak. Ariake, however, shares a surprising idea. He expresses his desire to conduct an experiment, explaining that he not only wants to restore her powers, but also break the curse that keeps them weak. With a sudden stomp of his foot, a magical rune materializes beneath the girl. The girl is shocked to learn about a curse on her. He explains that his special abilities like status abnormality perception and concealment cancellation revealed a rare curse on her. He tells her that he can break the curse and restore her powers. Using the rune beneath her, he activates his remove curse skill, combines it with restoration, and then uses speed up time to hasten the process. He then pleads with her to endure what is about to happen. In the blink of an eye, she experiences intense pain as if a powerful force were crushing her. Suddenly, a phantom-like being emerges from her mouth and hovers in the air. She collapses to the floor. Ariake rushes to her side, asking if she is still alive. She wakes up, gasping for air. They both gaze at the phantom-like being now floating in the air, and the girl asks if it was really inside of her. Ariake explains that it was so well hidden that normal judgment couldn't detect it. It was an anti-dragon curse that stripped dragons of their purpose in life, weakening their powers. The curse suddenly goes out of control and enters the High Priest. Ariake tells her that it seems the curse went back to the one who cast it, because they prevented the cursed person from getting cursed again. Originally, the curse was meant to neutralize a dragon's powers, but in a human, it makes them disintegrate instantly, and so the priest dies right away. All of a sudden, the girl feels a surge of power welling up in her, and Ariake explains that now that the thing that was blocking her power is gone, her healing abilities have fixed her up fast. Excited, the girl tests her powers by blowing the roof off of the dungeon, creating an exit for them. She's thrilled to finally understand her full potential. Out of the blue, she calls Ariake master, surprising him, and thanking him for saving her. She acts kind of nervously and asks Ariake about her appearance and if he likes it. As Ariake and Colette, the dragon girl, head to Alti Town, Colette still can't understand why the hero party kicked Ariake out, even after all the support he gave them. Ariake tells her to not get mad, saying that it's a pleasure knowing that they can go on without his support anymore. He even adds that thinking about it, the moment when they parted has become a sweet memory for him, much to Colette's confusion. He tells her that if they can avoid a bleak future by making silly demands, then it's fine with him. Colette then nervously asks him if he had a girlfriend in the party, and Ariake answers that he had 3. Boiling with anger, she vows to not lose to them. Meanwhile, a few hours prior, Bibia and the other heroes are all drinking, laughing at how miserable Ariake looked when he left them. The others agree, Purata commenting that he was really annoying. They ask Alicia if she thinks so too, and she only blandly agrees with them, adding that there's no meaning to a party without a hero. Bibia agrees with her, proclaiming that as long as he's there, there's no problem. Bibia then tells him that since they lost a member, they'll raid the cursed cave they conquered in the past. Purata then adds that it might be easier now that Ariake is gone, to which Bibia laughs and agrees. He then looks at Alicia, who is still staring out of the window, and asks her if she's even listening. Not turning away from the window, she quietly says that they're missing something. As Ariake and Colette reach Medicine Town, Ariake suggests that they rest here, since Alti Town is still some distance away. However, Colette is entranced by the buildings, saying that they still look refreshing after 1,000 years. While the town seems prosperous, Ariake can't help but feel that something is off. But before he can even finish voicing his concerns, Colette is still roaming around the town like a little child. She then smells something good and tells Ariake that they should go check it out, calling him hubby, which confuses a lot of passerbys. Ariake tells her that he'll only go with her if she doesn't act so conspicuously. Later, they find a tavern and feast on some delicious food. As Colette carries an entire roast pig, Ariake tells her to be careful, but she just bites off the head of the pig with no problem. The owner approaches them, happy that they're enjoying the food. However, despite the food being delicious, the tavern was empty. The owner then explains that the Devil's Forest appeared near the town, so a lot of businesses have stalled, even adding that he's unsure of how long he can stay afloat. He then advises them to leave if they don't want to get in trouble. Ariake then explains to Colette that the Devil's Forest was basically a nest of monsters that the Demon Lord created. It was more dangerous than dungeons since monsters just leap out. He tells her that the threat the forest poses is divided into 5 stages, and at the moment they're at the first stage, so it's still controllable. He then decides to go to the Adventurers Guild so he can get more information on the forest beforehand. Later at the guild, as they enter, the other adventurers can't help but look at the duo intensely. They make their way to the reception desk where he tells the receptionist his name, and asks for information on the Devil's Forest. The adventurers immediately recognize his name and begin to talk amongst themselves, in awe that he's there with them. The receptionist then tells him to wait there because there was an edict from the king himself. Later, a burly man comes out from a room behind the desk and introduces himself as the guild's leader, Osim. He asks him if he truly is Ariake Mikama. Ariake confirms that he is, though he'll have trouble proving it to him. Osim tells him that there's no need, since the personal description of him on a wanted poster looks very similar to him. He just never thought that he would shamelessly waltz into an adventurer's guild. He then tells Ariake that the king has an edict for him. His adventurer's license has been revoked. The adventurers are shocked to hear this, fully aware that the revoking of an adventurer's license was a punishment only reserved for those who had committed the most atrocious of crimes. Ariake too is shocked by this turn of events, formally believing that at worst he would be demoted to E rank and can't even buy ingredients anymore, much less accept requests. Colette finds it strange that he says all of this but still has a smile on his face. He then explains to them that he only joined because of the system, and tells them that since the Devil's Forest has appeared nearby, they would need all the manpower they can get. However, Osim and the other adventurers scoff at him, claiming that since the kingdom's Night Corps has been sent to the forest to deal with it, they only need to clean up after they're done, so they have no need for someone like him. Colette asks if she can turn them into charcoal, but Ariake tells her to not, since it would only cause trouble. Meanwhile, Ariake finds it strange that the Night Corps was sent instead of the hero party, since they're not that far, and wonders if something happened to them. As Osim and the other adventurers continue to scoff at him, he then tells Colette that it's time to leave. But before he could, the door bursts open and a wounded knight stumbles in. He tells the adventurers that the subjugation has failed, and that the Night Corps has been nearly annihilated. He adds that an army of monsters was headed for the town. He urges the adventurers to prepare defenses and that all deserters will be executed. The knight then drops to the ground, silent. As the guild panics, Ariake examines the knight, saying that he'll live although he's unconscious. Osim tries to calm them down and boost their morale, but the adventurers are still visibly shaken, wondering how on earth they'll be able to do what the Night Corps failed to do. Ariake then approaches him, saying that there's still someone willing to fulfill his role. Before Osim can say anything, Ariake drops a large bag of money in front of him, asking Osim if he'll leave things to him. Osim asks Ariake what someone like him can even do to stop the horde of monsters. Ariake then tells him to not say such things, and asks him how much the mop-up operation was going to be. Osim told him that they were going to be paid a gold coin each, which is too cheap considering they're risking their lives for it. Ariake agrees, saying that if the workers aren't properly paid, then it'll make sense that they wouldn't want to work for them. He then tries to count them and then claims that there should be enough. The adventurers all the while wonder what he's doing. Standing above the reception table, he empties the bag of coins in front of all of the adventurers for all of them to see, and gold coins begin to pour out and pile on the table. He then promises to reward anyone who follows him, participates, and remains till the end in the upcoming battle. A handsome down payment of 100 gold coins. At first, the adventurers doubt him, saying that it's probably just an empty promise. But Ariake declares it to be a covenant under the statutes of the Great Kingdom. A promise so sacred that it's even considered by some to be a curse. With that, the adventurers then begin to consider the offer, fully aware of what 100 gold coins can do. Ariake then reminds them that as adventurers, they're the only thing that stands between the monsters and the peaceful town, and that it is their job to put their lives on the line and fight to keep that peace. With that, the adventurers then begin to cheer, their morale now boosted. Osim then orders them to begin preparations for the journey ahead. Later, during preparations, Osim thanks Ariake, admitting that nobody would have dared to stand on the front line if it weren't for him. He also admits that at first, he was sure that nobody would listen to a person like him. But now he seems almost divine and wonders if he's really the rumored useless Ariake. With a demonic look, Colette then insults Osim, calling him dumb and bald, adding that he only got lured in by money and tells him to know his place. Ariake then corrects her, saying that being lured by money is normal, since money allows people to live their lives, and those who stand at the top have a duty to pay a proper compensation. So sending people to their death with 1 gold coin as compensation is nuts. Osim then asks him how he got so much money, to which he just said that it's money he saved, much to Osim's surprise. Osum still questions his motives, wondering why a traveler would go so far for them. He then tells him that there was an eatery that made really good pasta and that it would be a shame if he couldn't eat it anymore. With a smile, Osum then tells him that if they come back alive, then he'll treat him to the pasta with his reward money, forgetting that it's ultimately Ariake's money in the end. Later, with the preparations finished, Osum reminds the adventurers again that they're the last line of defense for the town, and gives them the battle strategy. Finally, he tells them that though the situation is hopeless, they have no other choice but to win. Watching from a distance, Colette expresses her concern for the adventurers, saying that they're completely outnumbered, stating that there are at least 1,000 monsters judging by the tremors made by the horde, but there are only 100 adventurers at best. She then asks Ariake if he'll wipe out the monsters for them. Ariake then tells her that if he gives them the idea of a savior that handles everything, it won't lead to anything good, and that the adventurers have to gain confidence as they fight by themselves. Colette then sees a pillar of fire going up into the air, and tells Ariake that the fight has begun. He then tells her that they'll be joining them, saying that while the adventurers must help each other to win their battles, it's not wrong for him to still support them. Later, as the fight rages on, the adventurers struggle to deal with the monsters. Explosion after explosion goes off around them as they fight. In one area, the Nagul brothers fight valiantly, but they're overwhelmed by the sheer number of the monsters. Nevertheless, they refuse to throw in the towel because doing so would spell doom for their hometown. Back to Osum, one of the adventurers report that a third of their left wing had been decimated, and that the Nagul brothers are heavily wounded. Another reports that the right wing needs reinforcements as a caterpillar dragon has appeared there. Finally, another adventurer calls out to the guild leader as an ogre king approaches them, which the adventurers recognize as an S-rank monster. Osum then gives the order to retreat, but before they can do so, the ogre king roars, incapacitating them. The monsters then see this as an opportunity to kill as many adventurers as they can. As one of the monsters rushes to kill one of the adventurers, Ariake swoops in and beheads the monster, saving her. He explains to the adventurer that that was the ogre king's skill, Dread. As the adventurer thanks him, Colette comes in between them, interrupting her. Osum then asks Ariake why he's this far in the front lines, saying that a C rank like him would die on the spot. Ariake tells him that as the one who made the request, he has a duty to win. Ariake then uses his skill and, with his words, strengthens their mental resistance. With that, the adventurers find that not only can they move, their body is also lighter than usual. He then orders Colette to begin moving, and with that, she leaps into the air and breathes a giant ball of fire onto the monsters, incinerating them. Osum, shocked out of his wits, asks Ariake exactly what she is. Not paying attention, Ariake comments on the ridiculous power she has. Osum then thanks them, but still reminds them that the enemy advance still hasn't halted. Ariake then explains that the problem with their army is numbers, considering that even with sufficient defenses, they can't defend against an army that outnumbers them 10-1. But because of that, he'll use his skills to buff their status tenfold. Not only that, but he'll lower the enemy's status to a 10th, so that way the differences in numbers will be overturned. At first, Osum doubts him, saying that such a feat is impossible, but Ariake reassures him, telling Osum that they should just focus on winning. He then begins casting spell after spell, slowly increasing the adventurer's strength and lowering that of the monsters. Soon enough, as the monsters charge, the heroes have such an easy time cutting them down it's almost a joke. Osum is then shocked and is surprised that Ariake could cast 20 spells, even though the maximum is believed to be 3. He then explains that he usually did that much while he was in the hero party, probably even more. In awe, the adventurers then reason that ultimately the exploits of the hero party are all thanks to Ariake. Colette then chimes in and claims that despite all he did, the hero party just one-sidedly banished him. Ariake then tells her to not say that, explaining that they just decided they can go on without his skills, and he respects their decision as a parent. Some other adventurers then warn them that more monsters are coming. However, this time they begin to move with more confidence because of Ariake's protection. They then notice that the Ogre King isn't moving much, possibly because it's wary or because he doesn't think he needs to move much if he can get the other monsters to get things done. However, Ariake can't help but feel that something is off, confused that a monster like this would appear in the first stage of the Devil's Forest. Ariake then tells Colette that she can go fight it, since the adventurers can't defeat it. The Ogre King attempts to crush some adventurers under its hand, but Colette stops it just in time. It then tries to roar again, but Colette punches it and it stumbles back. After casting a few more spells, Ariake then kicks the ogre and sweeps it off its feet. Just as Colette gets distracted watching Ariake, the Ogre King picks her up and slams her to the ground. Ariake then comments that that was bad. Osum thinks he's talking about the Ogre King slamming Colette into the ground, but as Colette stands up, Ariake clarifies that he wasn't talking about that. As she stands, she tells Ariake that she'll show the Ogre King a bit of her power. Intrigued, he agrees to see what exactly she can do. As Osum cuts down a goblin, he realizes that was the last of the small fry. One of the adventurers report that both wings are done with mopping up the remaining monsters. Osum then tells the adventurer to tell the others that they'll reinforce the central team in the Devil's Forest. He then turns to tell Ariake that they're done with the other monsters, but pauses when he sees a giant vortex in the sky caused by the ogre's roaring. The adventurers fall to the floor, unable to withstand the pressure. Meanwhile, Colette, wiping blood from her face, then tells Ariake that they should get it over with. However, Ariake is concerned about whether she can wield her recently restored powers, and the burden it might have on her, so he casts some buffs on her just to be sure. Colette is slightly offended by this, believing that he's underestimating her. Ariake apologizes, apparently still having an overprotective habit from his hero party days. Colette then tells him not to worry, since if she sees it as his love for her, then she can feel a lot more powerful. As she powers up, something begins to resonate within Ariake as well. He then tells Colette that if she truly is a divine dragon, then she should use her Dragon Knight's powers as she pleases. He then uses the skill Decisive Battle. Colette then reveals her true form, the Great Gespent Dragon. As she looms over the battlefield, all the other adventurers stare in awe. The skill Decisive Battle allows a person to regain their innate power for a brief period of time, so using it on Colette allows her to use her innate power without having to take the burden that comes with it. Colette in her new form declares to the Ogre King that by her name and the name of her Dragon Knight Ariake, she'll impart judgment upon him. She then calls upon her flames and uses the skill Last Fury. A powerful beam of fire descends upon the ogre and engulfs it, shaking the battlefield. When the smoke clears, the adventurers are spellbound to see that the Ogre King has been vaporized into nothing. Almost immediately, Colette transforms back to normal and falls down. Ariake catches her, telling her that she did a good job. Smiling, she tells Ariake that going full power felt good, and thus spelled the defeat of the Ogre King. Suddenly, a flash appears in the sky, and Osum recognizes it as the sign from the central team, signaling the end of their mopping up mission. The adventurers then begin to cheer, calling the battle a miracle. Ariake then tells them that it's not right to simply describe the battle as a miracle or a coincidence, because ultimately they're the ones who stood valiantly and fought all of the monsters in order to protect the town. At the end of it all, it's their victory that they've achieved by putting their lives on the line. With that, all the adventurers make their glorious return back to the town. Some days later, Ariake then prepares to leave Medicine Town, much to the disappointment of the townsfolk and adventurers. They continue to offer to repay the favor, but Ariake tells them to cut him some slack. Osum intervenes, telling them that they're being disrespectful. He then kneels in front of Ariake, apologizing for his discourtesies and offers to retract his license revocation, telling him that he sent a letter of protest on behalf of the town to the kingdom. Slightly disappointed, Ariake tells him that he didn't have to, and that he should stop being so formal. With a smile, Osum tells him that he can visit anytime he wants. As they part ways, Osum tells him to stay safe. Later on the road, Colette still expresses her excitement on how she was able to use the divine dragon form. She's also glad that the townsfolk were kind enough to give them a horse and carriage. Ariake then tells her that they will be stopping at Olden town, and since they have a letter of introduction, it'll be convenient for them when they stop there. To get there, they'll have to pass through the fertile Great Woods, where the elves live. They both agree that the elves can be hard to approach at times. Colette offers to burn them to cinders if they dare to defy Ariake, but Ariake tells her to stop thinking of burning everything. However, Ariake is still wondering why they sent the Night Corps to the Devil's Forest instead of the hero party, as he still wasn't able to get any information on the matter. Seeing his worried face, Colette stuffs a bun into his mouth, telling him to think later and that they should move at their own pace. Ariake then decides to do so, assuring himself that he's just overthinking things. Meanwhile, in a cave, Bibia is fatally wounded and can hardly stand without using his sword for support. He's frustrated, wondering why he has to go through all of this even though he's the hero. He then cries aloud, wondering what that monster was doing there of all places. Elga tries to tell Bibia something about Purara and Alicia, but Bibia yells about the insignificance of their absence. Their priority should be running far from the bloodthirsty monsters currently hot on their trail. Bibia gets distracted for a moment and a monster who has him in clear sight launches for an attack. Luckily, Elga uses his shield to protect Bibia and block the monster's attack. The monster is, however, so strong that Elga struggles to stay grounded. The beast pushes hard at the barrier Elga has, and Bibia notices enough to start nagging the guy, saying he should do better at protecting him. Elga grits out that he's trying his best like he always does. Bibia reflects on how bad things have gotten, He's run out of MP and healing potions. The dungeon was supposed to be a warm-up, not a tough time for an S-rank adventurer. A few hours ago, he'd stood outside the cursed cave and decided going up to even the 50th floor would be a piece of cake for a guy like him. The entire group had agreed, as they had been to the cave many times before, led by their trusted S-rank hero. They didn't have anything to worry or be afraid about. The Saintess had bothered to ask just how prepared they were before they would enter. She expressed her feelings that they were not equipped enough and they needed to go replenish some items. Babia shunned the idea. All that hassle for a low-level dungeon? Nah. Saintess insisted that with Ariake's absence, it was only wise that they would do what he would have done. Bring enough items so no one gets themselves in a twist. Babia waved her off as being worrisome. Purata teased her about being selfish with her healing powers. If they had her healing powers, then what did they need items for? Babia put an end to the talk by firmly stating that they would go into the cave. And now that Ariake wasn't around, Purata was needed to light the path. She grumbled about the inconvenience of odd jobs like that now that Ariake wasn't with them. Babia called Ariake baggage that they were better off without, and his absence gave Purata the room to prove that she was a great sorceress. This immediately brought Purata out of her grumbling mode. Babia felt Purata and Delia were easy to control because they were in love with him. Just a bit of compliments here and there and they would comply. It was different with Alicia, but never say never. They would all kiss his feet because he is the hero. He has great ambitions to defeat the Demon Lord and get the princess of the saved kingdom as a reward. The said kingdom he will then rule as he wishes. Babia tells the party they'll have drinks after they return from the cave at dusk. Alicia decides to keep mute. She's tried her best, but they won't listen. They go into the cave and are greeted with a sound that, when they look up, realize came from a bat. Just a bat. Babia asks, or rather commands, Purata to increase the intensity of her light, as they can barely see an approaching enemy with the dim light she's providing. Purata pleads with Babia to not get angry, as she is doing the best she can. Babia gets angry regardless, stating even Ariake did a better job providing light for their paths. Purata stammers in agreement, pitching that it was his job, hence why he did it so well. Alicia expresses that Ariake once pointed out that a dungeon is like the inside of a living being. Unlike a regular building, a dungeon has its own magic, and any magic used by foreign bodies would be constantly limited. A monster shows up from nowhere and Delia is quick to successfully attack. She then expresses she'd rather they stop talking about Ariake and get going. The monster Delia just attacked springs back up to their disbelief, as it should be dead after just one hit. Delia strikes again, and this time the monster is confirmed dead by Elga. Delia wonders out loud why the monster wasn't defeated in the usual way, and Babia snides at Purata that it is somehow all her fault, since her sorceress light is so dim and weak. They decide to proceed, and Alicia tries again to tell them that they really shouldn't be doing this in the first place. If their field of vision is obstructed, then they shouldn't be proceeding. A wiser move would be to retreat and draw up a proper strategy before returning. Babia calls Alicia worrisome and too cautious, and claims retreating would mean showing their backs to the enemy, which is more dangerous. As their commander-in-chief, he announced that they will keep going. Inwardly, he's furious. Alicia keeps trying to challenge and defy his commands. The dungeon is meant for C-rank adventurers, so being told to back out is beyond outrageous. What would society say? At some point, they realize they're going in circles, meaning they're lost. This triggers Babia's sharp mouth once again, as it shouldn't be so hard if they have a map. The Saintess points out Ariake worked with an incomplete map, but on a closer look, he did them the favor of leaving markings on the cave walls that would guide their path better than the map would. A loud sound resonates that Purata thinks could belong to a boss monster, even though they're in a low-level dungeon. Out comes a skeleton knight, which relieves the group. With one strike from his blade, the skeleton knight is decapitated, but still alive. Skeleton Knight. It's a C-rank creature that should have been defeated with a single attack. Something more strange happens after. Babia feels himself being counterattacked. His own blade redirected toward him, so he's piercing himself right in the guts. Babia cries out in pain. It hurts so much that he can't even move. The Skeleton Knight raises a bloody scythe to finish him off, but Elga rushes in to protect the hero. He aims to attack back with his shield, but the knight easily dodges and laughs, leaving Elga to comment on its unfortunate speed. Babia is relieved that he is saved, but hopes Elga can tackle the enemy soon enough. Delia watches in shock, wondering out loud how the Skeleton Knight caught Babia by surprise and is now a handful for Elga. Was it always this hard to battle such creatures? Skeleton monsters are level 20 monsters which anyone should be able to defeat. The party has defeated their own share in the past, so it's confusing as to why it's suddenly proving difficult. Elga continues to struggle with the monster, leading Babia to yell about his incompetence. Thankfully, Elga speaks up for himself and tells Babia that he needs to pipe down. After all, Babia didn't have any better luck with the monster than Elga did, and should stop feeling so important. Delia steps in with her indefensible sure kill fist, but the monster remains unscathed to their disbelief. The monster then releases magic of its own that causes Delia to fall back and bleed through her mouth. She's now in a critical condition from getting hit by low-tier magic that didn't even require chanting. Purata knows it's weird for their powers to be this low-leveled themselves. Babia agrees and commands Purata to cast support magic on the crew. Purata admits that she did all that from the beginning as usual, as they would have done normally when Ariake was around. Babia then realizes they're technically at their best condition, and it's below enough, which causes Babia to panic. Alicia reiterates that they're having a hard time because Ariake isn't there. Babia reiterates that Ariake was not that important to constantly keep mentioning. Alicia then announces that holy water is a weapon they can use against the skeleton knight. It would stop its movement, and she's only mentioning it now since Babia is unable to make the judgment on his own. What Babia does need to know, as Alicia mentions, is that Ariake's assistance skills kept the crew afloat. His skills were the reason they were all able to even become A-rank adventurers. Babia remains in denial. He got to the level he is through training, he says. At some point, Alicia released her healing powers. She now talks about a reformation. They'll retreat for now since they're not that well equipped. That word again. Retreat. Babia wants to object, but Alicia promises that only death awaits them should they continue. Finally, they decide they'll leave the dungeon, but ever-stubborn Babia can't see how they can do that. They're only on the 15th floor, there has to be another way. Like Alicia using more for healing powers they proceed. Alicia admits that she could use more for healing powers for them, but it would be at the cost of her MP consumption. Reckless use of MP isn't wise. Babia proposes the use of items then, though everyone doesn't have many items left combined. Babia asks Purata to hand over all of her support items, and she refuses, stating she'll need them eventually. Babia doesn't see how, as she's barely doing anything as it stands. He asks Alicia to check Purata's remaining magic power capacity, and Alicia reveals it has depleted significantly. The proof is their field of light is getting narrower. When Ariake was around, he used a skill called magical storage on Purata, which is why she could always boast a capacity of over 10,000. Purata goes into a state of denial, accusing Alicia of spewing nonsense because she was bullied a little, and a title of Saintess is suddenly making her feel so high and mighty. The crew continue to bicker and complain, and it finally awakens something that was peacefully asleep. They have awakened a Fenrir, a monster that should have been on the 99th floor. The Fenrir was just leaving his nest to find something to eat, and on spotting the party members, decides they'll do for lunch. Babia identifies it as Hell's watchdog with a killer intent. As it stands, they're in real big trouble. The Fenrir. Rumors have it that the Fenrir lives on the 99th floor, not the 15th, a monster that even S-rank adventurers have difficulties with. Purata proposes that they run, but Babia counters that one reckless movement could lead to their annihilation. Even Babia realizes they probably could have handled the monster easily in the past, but now is different. As much as he would prefer they run away, their best bet would be to use someone as bait. He starts to analyze who it could be, ruling Alicia out as she is an S-rank member with healing powers that would come in handy. Elga and Delia are also ruled out, leaving Purata. Babia punches her in the stomach and retrieves the extra items he was suspecting she had on her. Elga yells at him to stop acting a fool, as this is the worst possible time to have a falling out. Babia states that they will need the items to escape and there is no other way. The sick plan is to leave Purata there while the rest make an escape. She is the weakest link, having low magic power, so she would only be a liability to the rest. It's not like they're abandoning her, he says. They're simply leaving her behind for a short while so they can escape and get reinforcements to help her out. Delia agrees to the plan to Purata's shock and disbelief. Inwardly, Babia doesn't have any plans of reinforcement. She'll be bait, and then she'll die. Alicia refuses to leave, offering to fight the Fenrir. She creates a magic barrier which blocks off the other three members, leaving just her and Purata in the lion's den. Babia is happy about the barrier as it gives the rest enough time to flee. He announces they'll leave quickly and be back with reinforcements. Inwardly, he feels the Saintess is only about to waste her life, and what a pity that would be because she can still be of use to their party. All the same, better them than he. Purata watches them leave and swears to never forgive them. She threatens a curse over them, and the Fenrir offers to deal with them on her behalf. No need for a curse. Alicia starts to converse with the Fenrir, which irritates Purata, who is rather scared that they will die. That is no time for leisure conversation with a beast. Alicia asks Purata to pipe down as she doesn't plan for them to die. The Fenrir asks what Alicia wants, as her resolve is quite evident. Is it revenge against her comrades or the power to save the world? Alicia expresses she wants neither. She would rather get Ariake back and form a romance with him. Purata is now really irritated. Her own resolution is that Ariake is useless and is no hero. Alicia counters that he is unique against the appraiser's evaluation. Alicia asks permission from the Fenrir to tell a story, which it grants. She starts by saying she looked into every book on every part of the continent, until she came to a conclusion. Ariake has a unique skill known as the god who serves next to you. Purata's curiosity is piqued. Alicia continues that it is a fairy tale aging over 10,000 years, a story they've all heard from when they were little from their grannies. When the hero that will save the world appears, the hero will be the serving god that would provide all sorts of help. Purata asks if this means Ariake is a god, and Alicia clarifies, saying that it is just a figure of speech that shouldn't be taken literally. Ariake is more like one chosen by the gods. In the fairy tale, God was depicted as a compassionate being who advised the hero and helped him in every possible way to save the world. Defeating the demon lord would not have been possible without him as well. From assisting with their statuses using skills, to managing their items and guiding them through dungeons, their hero party was able to maintain its best condition all thanks to Ariake. He was the perfect support to the hero party, just like the fairy tale depicts. Alicia appeals to Purata's reasoning that she must have noticed it already. Ariake was their bedrock, and now they're struggling with low-level creatures like the Skeleton Knight. The Fenrir basically says their discussion time is over, and Alicia presents to Purata support and healing items that she had brought along with her. She asks Purata to please use the items and support her from behind. If they don't swing into action against Purata's incessant complaints, they'll die. The Fenrir tells them killing insects like them will be easy. And Alicia reasons if they're not really worth the fight, then the Fenrir might as well let them live. The Fenrir expresses he's lived in the dungeon for a long time now, and he's bored enough to entertain itself with a battle with them. Purata starts to scurry away with the items Alicia presented to her. Every man for themselves, it seems. Alicia's barrier is cancelled, and she admits that she put it there in the first place to keep out external disturbance and factors. The Fenrir flips into the action, but after several exchanges, it realizes Alicia isn't as easy of a target as it judged. Alicia came prepared, it seems. Alicia uses her staff to give the Fenrir a good whack that has the Fenrir momentarily off of its feet. The Fenrir acknowledges the strength and asks Alicia if she's really human to have such a huge beast flying like that. Alicia promises that this is one of her weaker attacks, as she no longer has the support of Ariake to make her even stronger. This angers the Fenrir that she is able to go toe-to-toe with it at her weakest level. The Fenrir further acknowledges that her power isn't the type a normal human would have, and curiosity makes it want to know what exactly is the source of her great power. Alicia expresses that she trains a lot, but the Fenrir isn't buying it. It basically says everything has a limit and there's only so much power that even excessive training would give. It probes for the actual answer, but Alicia sticks to the training facade. Or maybe it's not a facade. According to her, the power she has is power she achieved from years of brutal training, the type that leaves you sore and coughing blood after. The Fenrir's next question is why she would go through such lengths to obtain the power she has now. And she admits Ariake has always been her driving force. He told her to get stronger. If she got stronger, then she could easily impress Ariake. All she's ever wanted is to be strong enough to be his support, because they could get married, who knows? The Fenrir expresses that she's the great saintess, but would like to know if Ariake is stronger than she is. Alicia gives an affirmative. He's stronger, and the saintess title is such a nuisance to her. She was just hoping Ariake could see her for herself. The Fenrir decides Ariake is the most interesting person he's heard about since he's been sealed inside the cave. It now has a new goal to meet this said Ariake, who is stronger than the saintess, and fight him till it perishes. The whole thing sounds like a suicide mission to Alicia, and she doubts Ariake would agree to fight the Fenrir with such conditions. Alicia comes up with a better proposal. She will fight the Fenrir, and if she wins, it would have to grant her a wish. The Fenrir agrees, swearing that his promise to her will not be broken. They both engage in battle, and Alicia comes out the winner. The Fenrir then probes her request from it. What would she like? Eternal life and everlasting youth from a miracle drug in exchange for its life? Or perhaps a legendary sword it once swallowed? Alicia's request is for the Fenrir to be her familiar, to the Fenrir's absolute disbelief. If she has the Fenrir as a familiar, she would appear strong to anyone she comes in contact with. She reasons it gives the beast a new sense of purpose after being sealed in the cave for thousands of years. Better than waiting to die. The Fenrir refuses, and Alicia reminds it of its oath to her. The Fenrir lets her know that the curse placed on it wouldn't allow it to step outside of the cave. It doesn't have a problem becoming her familiar, but she has to consider the curse, which renders it useless to her. It apologizes to her and admits it entertained the idea of the two going on adventures. Alicia coins the plan of Fenrir dying temporarily so she can put it in her item box. If it can't leave the cave alive, then it will leave temporarily dead. Alicia assures the beast that she will be able to resurrect it 2 to 3 hours after death. The Fenrir tells her that there isn't a single sorcerer alive that can use resurrection magic, so excuse it for expressing its doubt that she can. Alicia recalls that this is one of the only times Ariake ever praised her, so she's always excited to use his idea and her magic combined to achieve something. The Fenrir decides whether it lives or dies. Alicia has been a very interesting companion to have. If she can successfully bring it back to life though, then it looks forward to meeting the well-talked-about Ariake. Alicia promises she will bring it back to life, and the Fenrir, in response, swears its loyalty and service to both Alicia and Ariake. Once she's outside the cave, she plans to find a vast plain where there would be no humans to witness, in order to resurrect the Fenrir. The Fenrir discloses that she's female, and can transform into human form, which would be easier. But Alicia gets the wrong idea, as she could easily become competition for Ariake if she's pretty enough. She then struggles with an increase in status and her own jealousy. Later on, she is reunited with the party members and announces she will be leaving the party. Thankfully, it is also revealed that Purara made it safely out of the cave. Elga expresses that Alicia is still much needed, especially now that the Kingdom Council has decided to confiscate Babia's holy sword for being a coward and abandoning his comrades. To get his sword back, the party would need to complete a D-rank request. The party reveals they are on the search for a new porter, and Alicia's spot is still open for whenever she feels better. She takes pride that she's now free to be reunited with Ariake. At that same time, Ariake is busy saving the town of Medicine from monsters, and then proceeds to the fertile woods where the elves live. News hasn't reached him yet about Babia's confiscated sword fiasco. Ariake and Colette arrive at the elven forest, but meet a surprisingly hostile reception. They are surrounded by elf archers and general soldiers who have orders to arrest Ariake, the one whom they call the Walking Disaster. The troop commander informs Ariake about their intention to fulfill their mission, with or without brute force. Colette angrily steps in and uses her fire magic to burn the bows and arrows aimed at them. She commends their bravery in wanting to capture her hubby, as that's what she constantly calls Ariake. Alicia might just have some unknown competition. Colette is ready to do more, but Ariake stops her, as he doesn't understand what's happening. The soldiers don't seem ready to talk. Instead, they try to attack Ariake. Ariake buffs up his physical strength to scare them off a bit. They accuse Ariake of wanting to destroy their forest even more. Wait, even more? The elves combine their skills and create a Wind King barrier. A wind barrier that can tear anyone who touches it apart. Colette has some tricks to counter it, but Ariake doesn't wish to destroy the elves or their forest. He touches the barrier and falls to the ground. The troop commander approaches to see if he's dead. It turns out that Ariake used a skill to control his strength increase, making him bleed only a little. He tells the commander that the stunt he pulled is to prove that he means no harm. Ariake then requests a dialogue with them, but the commander has yet to trust him. After all, they were sent to capture him by the elf High King, Hayes. Princess Sarah, the High King's little sister, runs in, yelling at the troops to stop their hostility. According to her story, she knows Ariake and Colette, as they saved her along with Medicine Town a while ago. Princess Sarah was disguised as an adventurer elf when Ariake saved her from an orc at Medicine. The princess kneels before them and pleads for forgiveness, while every elf present is surprised at what is happening. As a way of apologizing, she invites them to the elf village. The troop commander doesn't agree but respects the princess. She also orders that Hayes must be informed of the Walking Disaster's presence immediately. On the way to the village, they learn that the driftwood in the river is mostly withered wood flowing from upstream. Princess Sarah treats them to a tasty meal at her home in the village. Sarah is very nice to them, which makes Colette suspect that she has other intentions toward her hubby. After eating, Ariake asks to understand the situation in the forest and why he's called the Walking Disaster. Sarah explains that the forest was once a fertile land until a year ago. Even though the areas around the elf village aren't yet affected, there's an ominous-looking place in the forest where the dark clouds gather and the withering is the most. It looks like elemental magic, and there's a possibility of monsters eventually emerging from it. In time, the village public order got worse as the trees withered. As for why Ariake is called a walking disaster, it's a conclusion the High King reached after extensively going through the records. Being kicked out of the hero's party itself is a disaster, and there's also the pact between the elves and the hero. The pact allows the hero and his companions to move freely within the forest. As someone who's kicked out and viewed as an enemy of the hero, it's only natural that the elves also see him as an enemy. Even though the time frames are different, Sarah's brother Hayes chooses to blame Ariake, as he desperately needs an answer to the village's problems. Princess Sarah pleads with Ariake to save their village, just as he saved medicine. King Hayes interrupts the conversation and accuses Ariake of trying to destroy their village. He handcuffs Sarah and ignores her pleas, saying she will be confined for a short while until she cools down. Ariake intervenes and breaks the handcuffs with a single blow, demanding to speak to Hayes. Intriguing. Ariake's latest act surprises everyone, especially Hayes, as he's bewildered at the nerve of the walking disaster. Ariake tells Hayes that he should let go of Princess Sarah and focus on him. The High King gets very angry and questions Ariake's audacity. Tensions are rising on both sides, as well as on Colette's side. Colette lets out her aura and is willing to attack the High King, partly because of Ariake and partly because his little act just destroyed the meal they were having. Ariake tells Colette to stay calm, while Hayes is shaken for a while after experiencing Colette's aura. The High King eventually gets over his horrifying encounter, and decides to capture Ariake to save the forest. He orders his guards to capture them. Ariake and Colette don't know how to escape as the doors are blocked. Thankfully, Princess Sarah calls them from behind and shows them a path to escape. They jump from the high ground and keep on running until they put some distance between themselves and the guards. It looks like Sarah's days of escaping to go on adventures finally paid off. Ariake urges the others to continue moving, but they're stopped in their tracks by Hayes' Wind King barrier. The High King traps them from behind and hits them with an attack. He reveals that he originally intended to capture them alive, but their latest act, in addition to escaping with his sister, has made him change his mind. He reveals that his latest barrier is so strong that it's more of an attack than a barrier, and there's no way they can survive it. The move is done and the smoke settles. Princess Sarah mourns for her dead friends, while the High King is pleased that the forest can finally heal. Ariake speaks from behind, sarcastically telling Hayes not to get cocky. It turns out that he used his decoy skill to create a clone for a distraction. While that clone was killed, he used his stealth to sneak behind the elves. At this point, Ariake understands that it's difficult to convince Hayes of his innocence, so he decides to surrender. He lets Hayes capture him and Colette, asking to be put in the magic barrier prison that keeps magic from getting out. If the forest keeps withering after that, then it would be obvious that he's not behind the calamity. Hayes agrees to this with no problem, as he's very confident of Ariake's guilt. Ariake and Colette are taken to the elf prison, which looks a lot more comfortable than a lot of houses. They discover that Princess Sarah is imprisoned alongside them. She explains that it's because she aided their escape, but she also says that she holds no grudges against them. She also says that she would gladly be imprisoned with Ariake forever. This puts Colette on alarm. Colette is ready to escape the prison, but Ariake reveals that the barrier also negates physical attacks, even though her attacks may not necessarily count as physical attacks. However, he has a way to escape if he wants to. The barrier reflects magic energy, so he could use inversion to make the barrier absorb the energy, overload itself, and collapse. Even with this master plan, Ariake doesn't intend to escape until his innocence is proven. He urges Colette to be patient, as everything will clear in time. A week has passed since the walking disaster was imprisoned, but things aren't getting better just yet. A large area of the forest was recently devoured by malice, and the High King is taking a look at it. He commands the place to be purified so the rot doesn't spread and malice doesn't build up. He also commands the guards to reinforce the magical barrier, just in case the problem is coming from there. Deep down, he questions his decisions and starts to doubt that Ariake is the problem after all. He's never experienced this disaster throughout his 10-year reign. The people became richer due to their logging projects, and as elves, they naturally became stronger through nature. Hayes remembers someone suggesting that he's rejected by the forest, which is the cause of the calamity. He wonders whether this could be true. He remembers the way he deduced that Ariake was the calamity. He heard the news of Ariake being kicked out during the hero's last visit. Hayes ponders deeply and now concludes that Ariake isn't the calamity. Just then, the ground starts to rumble and it feels like something big is coming. Meanwhile, back in the cell, Colette moans about how time has passed since they were jailed. Sarah, who has been released already, promises she's trying to prove their innocence. She says that Hayes is tough on the outside but really caring on the inside. The forest withering has just forced him to make some harsh decisions. Ariake says the forest is testing its leader, Hayes. Just then, they feel the tremor coming from outside. Ariake confirms that the anomaly in the forest has grown. The tremors that disturbed the village turned out to be a landslide that buried the village and engulfed many homes. The commander runs in looking for Hayes. She's relieved to find that the High King is alive and well, but is also troubled by the catastrophe in the village. She reveals that they're currently working to rescue others, but working hands aren't too many at the moment. The village is in a state of panic. Hayes is confused, as everyone keeps approaching and expecting him to come up with a solution. He has yet to see his sister and know that she's safe, so he can hardly think straight. A villager pleads with him to rescue her trapped baby, while others advise him to give orders for everyone to evacuate the village. Hayes is downcast, as he concludes that he's the reason for the forest withering and landslide. The forest must have rejected him. Everyone still looks up to him, waiting to receive orders on their next line of action. Hayes strengthens his resolve to save his village. Even though the forest has rejected him, the least he can do is lead the village through the current crisis. He announces that they won't abandon anyone, so he instructs the soldiers to clear out the homes, evacuating the elderly and children first. As the soldiers obey their king, Hayes personally rescues the trapped child, much to the delight of the mother. Just when it's looking like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, another landslide begins, this time heading straight to Hayes' location. The High King tries to stop it with his Wind King barrier, but the skill is next to useless in the situation. Just when he's about to give up, someone completely stops the landslide from behind. It's the walking disaster himself, Ariake. Ariake combines time stop, gravity manipulation, shock absorption, and force repulsion, activating all 4 skills at once to push the landslide back. The villagers are saved by the walking disaster, what irony. Just then, Princess Sarah and Colette arrive. Hayes is very relieved that his sister is safe. It's a good thing Ariake broke out when he did. Hayes is grateful to Ariake for saving the village and promises to show his appreciation later, but he points out that they still must rescue the trapped ones from the first landslide. The operation looks like it could take a while, so Ariake activates muscle enhancement, giving the elves extra energy to work and to lift the boulders off the ground. A little while later, the elf village, led by Hayes, formally celebrates Ariake for saving their village. Ariake isn't the type to demand public recognition, but Hayes insists that he must stay and be honored. The proud High King also apologizes, however difficult it proves, for making Ariake and Colette go through everything that they did. Hayes accuses himself of not being a good leader and being the cause of the disaster. Ariake corrects the king, saying that the landslide comes from the accumulation of malice, which occurs when the forest isn't properly thinned. According to Ariake, each tree in an elven forest must be properly pruned. The thickness of the trees prevented sunlight from penetrating and facilitated the spread of malice. Hayes suddenly remembers why he stopped thinning the forest. A few years ago, Babia irresponsibly advised him to stop thinning the forest trees. And it worked for the first few years, but things didn't turn out too well in the present. After listening to this, Ariake still blames himself for not properly advising Babia's party. After everything, he's still indirectly blaming himself for the village's misfortunes. It's finally time to go, even though Princess Sarah tries everything possible to make Ariake stay, much to Colette's annoyance. The commander promises to send a report to the kingdom. This would make Babia accountable for his naive actions. Ariake says goodbye to the princess. He says that she has all the qualities that make for a good leader, and that he's sure that Princess Sarah would be a great leader by the next time they meet. With that, they leave the elven forest. Alicia continues her quest to find Ariake. She's experienced traveling alone now, and compared to what she was used to, it sure seems nice. The only one whom she was currently missing is Ariake, and she wishes he was currently traveling with her. While talking to herself aloud, her familiar, the Fenrir, comes out. The creature asks why she speaks about traveling alone when she has a companion in her. They continue on their journey. Alicia reveals that her Ariake radar is picking up traces that indicate he passed through that location not long ago. While the Fenrir agrees that there are traces of immense power, she doesn't necessarily believe that it's Ariake. But the creature points out that the power isn't regular for a human, just like Alicia's. Alicia asks the creature to pick up the pace, as they have some distance to cover. The Fenrir is left to marvel at Alicia's audacity to command a mighty beast like it's nothing. Meanwhile, Babia's party is currently hosting a trial for adventurers interested in joining their party. The trial isn't going as planned, as no noteworthy adventurers showed up. Babia needs to complete his party to go on the D-rank quest. He must complete the quest to get his sword back, as stated by the Imperial capital. They need a healer in the party to replace Alicia. Elga points out that the news of his cowardice might have spread, making noteworthy adventurers skeptical about joining the party. Babia's pride gets in the way, as he chooses to blame the flyer Elga printed instead. He also complains that Basta, the porter who was hired the previous day, isn't a good choice, but he was hired just to work for the group. Babia only wanted female members, which might explain why he doesn't fancy Basta. Basta, who just finished organizing their baggage, openly questions his decision to stay or leave. especially since the flyer was specific about the need for women. They encourage him to stay, but deep down, it's only because he does a lot of work for them. Purata comes in with 2 visitors that Babiya can only assume are here for the trial. The adventurers ask if he's Babiya, and he feels important again. He proudly confirms that yes, he's the one. So he's taken aback when they start to laugh at him, labeling him the idiot who got his holy sword taken away from him. The 2 adventurers make fun of him, but the high point comes when they say that Ariake is better than him. They reveal that they were part of the Great Battle of Medicine Town. They narrate Ariake's heroics, how he showed up when the royal knights were dead and all hope was lost, and how he easily killed the king ogre that showed up. When Babiya finally manages to kick them out, the seed of discontentment is already sown. Purata suggests that they apologize to Ariake, pointing out that his unique skill is being the god of buffs, which explains why they're much better off with him than without him. Babiya angrily makes it clear that he has no intention to apologize to Ariake, and that anyone who wants to leave and apologize is free to do so. In a short while, the whole group starts to quarrel about whether or not to apologize to Ariake. They eventually decide to stick to their leader, but only for now. Tempers are still flaring when they hear another knock at the door. An angry Babiya goes to open it, expecting to see those brats who bragged about Ariake. His mind is made up to teach them a lesson, so he's pleasantly surprised to see a rather familiar face at the door. Lorelei Cornelia, the cleric. Lorelei had done missions as a temporary healer with the group in the past, so she was familiar with most of them. She introduces herself to new members like Basta, and she excitedly greets the other party members. She also asks about Ariake and Alicia, and they tell her that those 2 aren't around at the moment. Babiya adds that no matter who leaves the party, everything will be alright as long as he's around. Lorelei remembers the fun they all had when she joined them for missions in the past. She reminds them one by one, before disclosing her intention to participate in the trial for the new party member. Surprisingly, at least to her, they immediately approve her application to join the party. Babiya tells her that she's been selected out of dozens of applicants, making her feel more special. With Lorelei's presence, the team morale is high again, and they're finally ready to go take on their D-rank mission, which should ordinarily be a piece of cake. The mission is at Edcock Forest, and it involves getting rid of the wyverns settled in the forest lake. The ground provides a good spawning ground for low-level monsters, which then provides a great farming area for adventurers. Babiya is cocky as ever, claiming that the adventure is hardly worth his time. With time, the forest starts to get uncomfortable for all of them, until a C-rank manticore eventually springs out to attack them. A C-rank monster versus S-rank adventurer should be one-sided, shouldn't it? Babiya hits the monster, but it, surprisingly, doesn't go down. It uses its poisonous tail to sting him, effectively taking him out of the battle. Delia tries to shoot the monster down, but the monster is way too fast and evades all of her shots. They all yell at her to aim properly, and their teamwork and coordination game isn't looking impressive at all. Lorelei remains on the sidelines, wondering what happened to the impressive team she once knew. Eventually, the team does manage to defeat the monster. Victory is secured, but performance levels are embarrassing to Lorelei. She can't keep her mouth shut, and comes out to ask why everything feels so different from the last time. Take a wild guess, Lorelei. To save face, Babiya invents a story, saying that everyone's feeling a bit off that day because it's their first mission with a new team, and they haven't quite adjusted yet. Elga and Delia play along, even though they know it's not true. Purata tries to sneak away from the group, claiming her stomach hurts, but Babiya sees through her fib. Babiya insists that she lead the way as they continue their journey, scolding her for trying to escape. Purata gets upset and explains that she doesn't want to stay because she fears they might use her as bait once more. She wants to leave before that happens. Lorelei is surprised and asks what Purata meant by being used as bait. Elga tries to calm her down, assuring her that there's no need to worry. Meanwhile, Basta tries to persuade her that the problem isn't as small as it seems. However, she simply trusts the hero's party, believing them if they say that it's nothing. Babiya is surprised by Lorelei's innocence as an adventurer. Shortly after, the party members start feeling itchy all over their skin. Basta suspects it's because of biting insects, and checks his insect repellent, only to find it's empty. He tells Babiya that black flies have shown up after they ran out of repellent. Black flies, magical insects in the forest. They bite people and take away their MP, leaving itchy welts behind. Babiya asks Basta to hurry up and get more repellents, but Basta surprises him by saying, "They're all gone." Babiya scolds Basta for not bringing enough, but Basta reminds him that Babiya had told him to not carry more repellents before they started their journey. Babiya tries to blame Basta, saying he would have brought more anyway, and mentions how Ariake never ran out of supplies during their adventures. Basta is amazed to hear this because while overpacking is common, the idea of never running out of supplies is astonishing to him. He's never heard of such an incredible porter. Lorelai agrees and explains that since running out of items is inevitable, both the leader and the porter must prepare together carefully. Having the right items can make or break the adventure. She adds that the party's leader decides what to bring, considering the quest's difficulty and the party's strength. That's why, she says, behind every good porter stands a good leader. She concludes by asking why he didn't do that this time, especially since he's usually so good at not running out of items. He starts to get annoyed and says that sometimes things go wrong and bugs aren't a big deal. They're just a small annoyance. She smiles at him and kindly says it's okay, admitting she was worried about his troubles. He reassures her, saying that there's no need to worry. She apologizes and offers some extra insect repellent for the group. Babia almost declines due to his ego, but the rest of the party quickly accepts with gratitude. Later, they spot the wyvern and hide behind bushes. Lorelai suggests making a plan, but the team rushes ahead. She questions their hurry, and Babia explains that they want to finish quickly. They suggest a hasty plan. Whoever hits the wyvern first wins. Lorelai is surprised and disagrees, stressing the need to consider the unexpected in adventures. She reminds them their previous meeting only covered basic attacks, ignoring things like terrain, weather, stamina, and surprises. Lorelai points out that even if they only see one wyvern, others might be nearby and they haven't explored all options. Babia tries to reassure her as the hero, but Lorelai interrupts, asking why they're ditching clever tactics from their last quest. The party members appear confused by her words. She tells them that finishing a quest isn't just about individual strength, but instead using a strategy that combines everyone's skills in attack, defense, and support for better results. Babia starts feeling offended, asking if she means strategy matters more than their strength. He wonders if she's underestimating him, but she explains it's common sense. Lorelai reminds him that his clever strategies earned praise for their party, yet the rest of the party remains even more puzzled. She asks if they remember battling the behemoth. Basta enthusiastically recalls hearing about the famous battle. Meanwhile, Babia seems lost. Lorelai recounts what happened that day when they defeated the behemoth. Basta adds on that they did it in just a few hours, which is why he wanted to join the hero's party. Lorelai tells them that after that battle, their hero's party gained a reputation as great strategists. The others are confused by this, finding it unusual. Babia starts thinking about the strategy Lorelai mentions because they only want to fight that day. Suddenly, Babia remembers leaving all the support matters to Ariake during their tough battle against the behemoth. He vividly recalls how Ariake's strategies saved them that day. However, even though he now knows the truth, Babia stubbornly refuses to accept it and clings to denial. Lorelai interrupts his thoughts and reminds him that, to the best of her memory, Ariake handled all the preparations single-handedly, and guided them throughout the battle from the very start, but now Ariake isn't present. She slyly and coldly asks if Ariake's absence is the reason they've become such a pitiful excuse for a party. Finally, they are all forced to confront the truth they'd been avoiding. Delia gets upset with Lorelai for calling their party pathetic. Lorelai apologizes, explaining that the word had slipped out unintentionally. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted by Babia, who suddenly becomes hysteric, bursting into tears. He dropped to his knees and started sobbing loudly. Lorelai, trying to make matters worse, remarks that even a novice adventurer wouldn't cry like that in the presence of enemies. Delia asks her to stop and urges her to see the impact of her words. Elga steps in to comfort and soothe Babia, while Purata callously laughs at Babia for crying because of Lorelai, causing everyone to have to cheer him up. Purata makes matters worse by taunting him, and saying he is a useless and clumsy hero, and that crying on the ground is fitting for someone like him. She adds that this was payback for him leaving her in the grotto. Babia's wails grow even louder, resembling a child whose candy had just been taken away. Elga scolds Purata for teasing Babia when he's already down, and Delia joins in, supporting him. But Purata insults them for abandoning her. Just when things couldn't get worse, Basta decides to quit the team and go home. He tells them they can do whatever they want because he doesn't care and doesn't want to stay in their silly party. Elga warns Delia that if Basta leaves, strange rumors will start spreading again. Delia understands and says she'll go after Basta. Lorelai questions if they're really going to split up while chasing an enemy, but they tell her to be quiet because they're busy. Purata informs Lorelai that they'll use the hero as bait if they need to. Lorelai rushes to Babia and tries to get a response from him, but it seems like he's lost his mind at that moment. She slaps him hard, shakes him, and tells himself to pull himself together. Amidst his tears, he asks her to apologize to him, which disgusts her. Finally, she tells him that she's given up, and she doesn't want to believe it, but every member of the group is selfish, and the group has no right to be called the hero's party. Upon hearing this, Babiya sinks deeper into madness, displaying signs of mental delusion as he threatens anyone who mocks him with death. He unleashes a tremendous surge of energy from his sword. Purata alerts Lorelei that Babiya is about to release his final sword. Curious, Purata inquires about this move, and Elga explains that the final sword is one of the hero's most powerful techniques. It consumes over half of his MP and can cut through a large area, obliterating everything, including the wyvern and themselves, even without any enhancements. Lorelei becomes frantic because she recognizes the Great Forest's importance to their kingdom. She urgently orders everyone to stop Babiya before he destroys the forest. However, to her dismay, Purata and Elga flee for their lives, leaving her behind. Meanwhile, Babiya initiates his final sword, resulting in a massive explosion visible from an aerial perspective. Hours later, the party members find themselves locked in a cell. Babiya immediately protests, demanding to be released and questioning whether this is how they treat their hero. The guard retorts, branding them as criminals and urging them to be silent. Babiya argues that they were tasked by the kingdom to eliminate the wyverns, and not only has the kingdom failed to express gratitude, but they are now imprisoning them. The guard, disgusted, questions why they should be thanked. He explains that the lake in Edcock Forest was super important to their kingdom, so trading it for one wyvern's life is crazy. Plus, lots of adventurers use that road every day, and someone could have gotten hurt. The guard tells the person to think about what they did while they wait for their punishment. Then Lorelei speaks up and says that she's the one who stopped Babiya. She explains that she didn't have anything to do with wrecking the forest, and that she actually tried to stop the damage that Babiya caused. Without her, things could have been way worse. Babiya gets mad and asks if she's just trying to save herself. The guard thinks about Lorelei's plea and checks the party's records. Turns out Lorelei isn't even listed as a registered party member. Lorelei hits even harder by saying she barely knows Babiya and the others. To make matters worse, the other party members, including Basta, also deny causing the damage, throwing Babiya fully under the bus. They're not backing up Babiya at all. The guard listens to them and assumes they are all hurt trying to stop the hero, so he thinks only the hero should be locked up. They all agree with the guard, making Babiya angry. Delia tells Babiya to just accept his punishment. Elga says they'll wait for him outside, and Purata teasingly reminds him to think about what he did. Basta and Lorelei sarcastically say goodbye. Babiya tries to warn them that he won't let them off easy, but Chancellor Wardok from the Granum Kingdom arrives and interrupts. He explains that he was nearby on business, and it seems their imprisonment was a mistake. He orders the guards to free them right away. After they're out, Wardok tells Babiya he wants to talk, and suggests they have a meal together. He promises an amazing feast for Babiya and his group at the royal capital. Meanwhile, somewhere else, Ariake and Colette reach the charming Olden town. They're in awe of its beauty, but then a woman accidentally splashes dirty water on Ariake, soaking his clothes. She quickly apologizes, explaining that she got carried away while watering her flowers. Ariake brushes it off and they continue walking. However, Ariake confides in Colette that this incident right after their arrival feels like a bad omen. He admits that he can't shake this uneasy feeling. Even though the streets are adorned with lovely flowers, he can't seem to calm down. Ariake notices that the town looks unusually tidy, and Colette asks him if having things too clean is a problem. Ariake responds that it's not necessarily bad, but wonders where all the trash goes. Just then, Ariake spots the shadow of someone sprinting down a dark alley. However, their attention is diverted by a sudden crowd rushing into the street. They struggle to get out of the crowd, and after a bit of pushing and pulling, they finally break free. As a result, Ariake nearly collides with a man riding a horse. The man questions Ariake about his reason for approaching. This man is Heinrich Gross. He scolds Ariake, calling him a commoner, and speaks haughtily, asking if Ariake came to hear his speech. He mentions he'll be discussing his upcoming policy to maintain the city's beauty in the nearby square. As he rides away on his horse, he urges Ariake to listen carefully to his speech. This piques Ariake's curiosity, and he decides they should go and hear what this beautiful policy is all about. Heinrich kicks off his speech by getting the crowd excited and impressing them. The people are really into his sweet talk, cheering and complimenting his compassion. After the warm-up, he gets to the point. He tells everyone that the only thing causing trouble in their beautiful city is those paupers who avoid paying taxes, especially the beast folk, who are the worst culprits due to their strength and animal instincts. But he assures the crowd that he'll keep them safe from this threat. He insists that they clean up the slums and crack down on all the beast folk in the city. The crowd gets even louder in support. Heinrich signals for them to calm down and announces he's open to hearing from city representatives. The first one to step up is Segsta's district chief. He complains about a recent rise in theft in his district and requests Heinrich's help. However, the guards interrupt, telling him to handle it himself. The chief argues that the problem has become too big for them to handle alone. The guards try to make it seem like Heinrich doesn't care about small issues, but he stops them and says he wants his people to live in peace no matter the problem's size. The crowd cheers louder, but Ariake knows Heinrich is just putting on a show, an easy way to win over his people. Heinrich tells the chiefs that there are many beast folks in his district, making it clear who the troublemakers are. He questions why they haven't dealt with the beast folks yet, and the chief explains that they need their strength because it's an industrial district. Heinrich asks if they're profiting from criminal labor, and the chief denies it. Heinrich insists on creating a city that doesn't depend on criminal labor, and says they must eliminate every last beast folk. The chief finally agrees. Ariake is uneasy because even those who object end up agreeing with Heinrich. Next, the guildmaster of Olden City arrives with a complaint. The adventurer killer is back, having slaughtered 10 adventurers that month alone. Colette is scared by the news, and a man in the crowd recognizing them as adventurers warns them to be cautious. He says the hero killer exclusively goes after adventurers, and their true identity remains a mystery, making them incredibly dangerous. Heinrich confesses that he couldn't catch the killer when he faced them previously. However, this time, even if the killer is in the crowd, he's determined to find and deal with them. Heinrich finally spots Ariake and Colette in the crowd, and singles them out. He learns who Ariake is, and doesn't hesitate to inform the crowd. People in the crowd start mocking Ariake for getting kicked out of the hero's party, but Heinrich pretends to be polite and asks them to not be rude. He offers Ariake a private tour of the city as a gesture of goodwill. Colette tries to decline Heinrich's offer, but Ariake accepts, explaining he would like to see where the city disposes of its waste. As they tour the beautiful city, Ariake becomes curious about why Heinrich, who appears well protected, needs such a fancy sword like the one he's holding. The guards correct Ariake, revealing that Heinrich is actually a master swordsman. Ariake asks for permission to touch the sword, but he's scolded. He apologizes and Heinrich changes the subject, attempting to charm Colette. However, she rejects him harshly, even calling him a third-rate statesman. Heinrich becomes upset but conceals it. He redirects his attention to a poor man, who accidentally bumps into them. The guards assault the man for obstructing their path, and he pleads for mercy. Colette tries to dissuade Heinrich, but he still instructs his guards to get rid of the man. Ariake secretly uses a base speed increase on the man, helping him move quickly and escape harm. Later, Heinrich recalls a public execution he planned for some beast folks he captured, and suggests they all attend. At the execution site, 2 beast siblings, a brother and a sister, are chained. Heinrich's guards mistreat them terribly, prompting Colette to intervene, reminding them that the siblings are just children. Heinrich explains that the beast siblings openly opposed his policies and must serve as a warning to others. He then orders the siblings to be stoned to death. The guards aim their slingshots to shoot stones at them, but something strange happens. A mysterious barrier appears to shield them. Heinrich turns to see that Ariake is the one controlling this barrier. He scolds Ariake for going against his orders to protect the beast folks, but Ariake argues back, claiming that the only real beast present was Heinrich himself. Heinrich, unable to contain his anger any longer, orders Ariake's capture, and declares that he should face death. However, he decides to deal with the beast folks first and instructs his guards to kill the siblings. As the guards approach the beast folks, a sudden force repels them, causing them to collapse unconscious. Ariake realized that this magic was a powerful barrier that could destroy anything it touched, and he knew of only one person with such a skill. At that very moment, the Saintess Alicia arrived, making a grand entrance. Alicia steps forward and asks Heinrich for an explanation. Everyone is surprised to see her. She confidently walks over to Ariake and tells the guards to set him free. Heinrich tries to persuade Alicia to leave the execution area with kind words, but she points her staff at him and says that the clergy told her he was discriminating against beast folk in the city, which goes against their religion. Heinrich is shocked that the order comes directly from the clergy. Alicia explains that according to the Brigitism doctrine, racial discrimination is strictly forbidden, and yet Heinrich has been openly defying their faith. Heinrich notices that the crowd is starting to murmur, so he raises his voice, saying that what he's doing isn't discrimination, but rather punishing criminals. So the church has no right to lecture him on how to do it. Alicia reveals that she's been investigating and found out that he's been raising their taxes and taking their property, and those who oppose him meet a terrible fate. Alicia declares that as the great saintess of the Brigitte Church, it is her sacred duty to recommend Heinrich's excommunication. This shocks everyone in the room. Colette notices how worked up everyone is getting, and Ariake explains that because Brigittism is the state religion, its word is law, and since everyone here believes in it, they trust the church above all else. Ariake notices Heinrich getting nervous because he knows that if he's excommunicated, he'll lose all of his power. In the end, Heinrich decides to backtrack and claims he was just considering releasing the Beast Man. Alicia steps in to heal the wounded Beast siblings. Heinrich tries to slip away, but Alicia catches him and demands he apologize to both the Beast siblings and Ariake. At first, he refuses to apologize to Ariake, but a stern look from Alicia forces him to give in. He apologizes and leaves in embarrassment. After Heinrich leaves, Alicia becomes emotional and flustered as she's alone with Ariake for the first time in a while. Her daydreams are interrupted when she finally notices Colette standing behind Ariake. Unable to contain her curiosity, Alicia asks about Colette. Colette introduces herself, and Alicia is surprised by how cute and adorable she finds her. She can't help but feel a tinge of jealousy though, because in her eyes, Colette has an enchanting smile, a petite and delicate presence, and is basically the complete opposite of herself. Alicia begins to worry about potentially feeling like a third wheel in their group. Interestingly, on the other side of the coin, Colette is also envious of Alicia's beauty. She's taken aback by how stunning Alicia is, to the extent that she believes Alicia could even charm someone as unique as a dragonfolk like herself. Colette feels a sense of awe at Alicia's aura, finding it almost superhuman. She too wonders how to navigate this situation, especially since Ariake mentioned having a reliable companion, but she had no idea it would be someone like Alicia. Ariake breaks the tension by inquiring about where the others are and why Alicia is alone. She admits that she left Babia's party. Ariake is surprised, and Alicia confesses that she has been following him since leaving the hero's party, hoping to join his group. Ariake thinks about the matter for a while, and then he asks Colette what she thinks. Colette gets a bit nervous and wonders if Ariake is testing her. Alicia has a funny idea that Ariake is dating Colette now, so he's asking for her approval. Alicia notices that Colette seems unsure of what to say, so she decides to take the first step herself by telling Colette about her abilities and title. Luckily, Colette finds Alicia's introduction impressive and compliments her for being skilled in both advanced healing and revival magic. Colette also shares where she's from and talks about her abilities. Both girls admire each other, but also feel a little jealous. Eventually, they decide to accept each other because they both have a lot of respect for one another. They're both happy that they can now stay with Ariake without any worries. Ariake knew they were both stubborn, but he was surprised to see them getting along so well. Then the two beast siblings they rescued earlier come up to them and thank them for their help. The boy introduces himself as Hao and the girl as Anne. Hao makes a heartfelt promise to never forget Ariake's kindness. Ariake graciously suggests sharing the thanks with Alicia, offering her half. Curious about their future plans, Ariake asks, and Hao assures them that they will continue their adventures and won't let a man like Heinrich deter their love for the city. Alicia vows to ensure Heinrich learns a lesson, and that the children stay happy. They acknowledge the lingering concern about the adventurer killer, but find solace in their current happiness. Ariake expresses relief that the church is keeping an eye on the town for now, but senses something unsettling in Heinrich's gaze. Just as Hao and Anne are leaving, Ariake calls them back, leaving everyone curious about what's on his mind. In his office, Lord Heinrich slams his head on the table repeatedly, to the point where he draws blood, cursing Ariake. He's livid at the thought that Ariake dared to look down on a high-class noble like himself, when all he really did was just block the stones from hitting the beast folk. Hurling books around the room, he wonders what's so wrong about killing beast folk, firmly believing that their existence is a sin. Not only that, but he rages at the fact that the great saintess took his side, even going so far as to threaten to excommunicate him, a noble. He continues to shout, exclaiming that they will regret their actions and that he'll make them pay. After his tantrum, the office was a mess. He realizes that the church will be keeping a closer eye on him and that he needs to take care of them before then. Chuckling, he unsheaths his sword, assuring himself that even if he loses his standing, he still has it. Suddenly, the door opens and one of the guards enters. Heinrich tells him that they'll take care of the adventurer killer, but first he'll need to check if anyone suspicious has entered the Temple of Purgatory. Hearing this, the guard presents him with a list of adventurers. As Heinrich looks at the list, an evil leer crosses his face. He tells the guard to prepare the knights for tomorrow. As he leaves, Heinrich is elated to see Hao and Anne on the list. Looking at his sword, he claims that luck is on his side after all. At the Temple of Purgatory, Lord Heinrich and his knights lie in wait. As Heinrich looks at the list once more, a knight announces that he hasn't seen any suspicious adventurers when monitoring the temple. As Heinrich looks down and spots Hao and Anne, that evil grin crosses his face again. He then tells the guards to enter the temple. Later inside the temple, one of the adventurers wonders if they'll be okay with the adventure killer on the loose. His companion assures him, telling him that they'll be alright and that they shouldn't worry about some urban legend. Besides that, the price of the loot of the temple has skyrocketed. This assures the adventurer, but he still wants to move as quickly as possible. Suddenly, out of nowhere, the companion is impaled by a strange man in a cloak. He teases the corpse, asking how it feels to be killed by an urban legend. The adventurer realizes that it's the adventurer killer. The man stabs the adventurer in the leg, telling him that no one will save him, and that it'll be a pity if someone were to interrupt his fun. The adventurer attempts to attack the man, unveiling him in the process, revealing it to be Lord Heinrich. With a look of disgust, he tells the adventurer that since he saw who he was, he definitely can't let him live. With that, he cuts the adventurer down, all while laughing maniacally. He tells the adventurers to be grateful that even trash like them can strengthen his sword, since the sword's sharpness increases the more blood it touches. He then decides to go after Hao and Anne. Somewhere else in the temple, the siblings are making their way through it. Anne notes that it feels even creepier today. Hao then decides that they'll rest for a while. He then tells Anne that he's going to scout ahead. Anne agrees and says that she'll wait for him. Nearby, Heinrich eavesdrops on them, deciding to take this as a chance to kill Anne, deciding that he'll torture Hao later. But as he goes in for the kill, Hao suddenly appears out of nowhere and punches the noble, sending him flying. Bewildered, Heinrich demands to know how Hao was able to sneak up on him. Removing the dog ears from her head, Colette reveals that it was her all along, and that the real Anne was in fact behind him. Ariake then appears, much to Heinrich's shock. Ariake is surprised by how well the plan went, although he had his worries. Ariake then explains that hearing Heinrich's speech about the adventurer killer, it seemed strange that he'd mentioned that the adventurer killer was among the adventurers, even though it could have been anybody. It was also strange that someone like him would do the dirty work himself. With that, he concluded that he used the search for the adventurer killer as a ruse to continue his murder spree. Heinrich attempts to deny the allegations, but the formerly dead adventurers that Alicia revived with her powers claim otherwise. Colette then draws their attention to the sword he was using, which apparently grew more evil with every person it killed, something she couldn't pick up on because it was sheathed. Alicia then turns to Heinrich, calling him a criminal. She tells him that for the many crimes he's committed, his excuses will fall on deaf ears, and that once he's exposed, he'll lose everything. The noble then begins to shiver and mumble, though the others don't notice. The sword also begins to rattle under Colette's foot. While exclaiming that they'll all pay, the sword finds its way back to Heinrich with a huge explosion. With a now transformed sword, Heinrich tells them that he'll show them the real power of his demonic blade. As the noble waves his sword around, he tells the group that because they dare to insult him, they will all perish by his blade. Ariake tries to warn Heinrich, telling him that the sword is a monster, but it is too late. Suddenly, tentacles begin growing out of him, Heinrich all the while screaming in agony. Colette asks what exactly the sword is, and Ariake explains to her that it's a mimic, a monster that takes the form of an item and devours adventurers to grow stronger. As the mimic lets out a gurgled roar, it begins to randomly throw rocks at the group. Anne points out that the tentacles are multiplying in number. Alicia warns them that if the mimic gets any faster, they'll be in real trouble. Colette is confused, since mimics are low-level monsters. Ariake then explains that with enough souls, it has evolved into a hell mimic, which is regarded as a triple S-class monster. The hell mimic then lets out a shockwave which overwhelms the adventurers. Colette exclaims that the shockwave probably knocked everyone unconscious. Alicia notices that the monster's attacks are sluggish, so it likely hasn't completely absorbed Heinrich. After telling the other adventurers to evacuate, Ariake then tells Colette and Alicia to prepare for battle. At first, Colette is annoyed because all they're planning to do is hold it back, but Ariake clarifies that they'll defeat it, and he'll provide as much support as possible. Hearing this, Colette and Alicia fawn over Ariake, claiming that as long as they have him on their side, they can't lose. He then warns them to not go overboard and get separated since his buffs might not reach them if they do. Hao tells Ariake that he'll evacuate the others, since that's the best he can do at the moment. Putting his hand on his shoulder, Ariake assures Hao that he's a better adventurer than he gives himself credit for. As Ariake revives the last of the adventurers and as Hao leaves, the three get ready to face the Hell Mimic. The Hell Mimic lets out another gurgled laugh, promising to kill Ariake. As they charge, Ariake reminds the group to keep a tight formation and not go too far, otherwise it'll delay his buffs. He starts with Colette, granting her an invincibility burst, a speed burst, and an evasion burst. Ariake warns her that while the spells are strong, they don't last long, and that she should pull back after striking. As she charges to face the mimic, Ariake turns to Alicia and tells her that his buffs will only last for 45 seconds, and that she should put up a barrier before the buffs expire. Meanwhile, Colette is dodging the monster's attacks with ease. She teases it, telling it that its size makes it predictable. As she finds an opening, she lands a powerful punch on the monster, and pulls back promptly. However, the mimic grows a mouth where Colette hit it, and it snaps at her, narrowly missing her. They then realize that attacking it only strengthens it. Ariake tells her that she should keep baiting it. As another mouth begins to form, Colette kicks it. As she continues to dodge all its attacks, she boasts, saying that it can't even touch her because of Ariake's buffs. With one of its giant eyes, the mimic glances at Ariake and tries to attack him, but the barrier set up just in time. Alicia then asks Ariake to use his skills on himself as well. Ariake tells her that while he had a feeling it would attack him, he still wants to conserve his magic. However, Alicia is still concerned about him, telling him he could have gotten hurt. Ariake bluntly tells her that that would never happen as long as she's there supporting him. He tells her that she has saved the hero party countless times, so as long as she's there, they'll be alright. Alicia then begins to quiver, her face turning a bright red from blushing, thinking to herself that he manages to be so smooth even in the middle of battle. She then shouts that she can't focus on the barrier with him staring at her like that. Ariake apologizes, believing he upset her again. Meanwhile, the mimic continues to slam its tentacles on the barrier, attempting to break it. Ariake tells them that they still have some time before the barrier gives in, so he'll tell them the mimic's weakness. He reveals that while at first glance it looks like it's getting stronger, what they saw was only a trick. He points out that the tentacles around its damaged area are slower, so although it's resilient, it's definitely weaker. Furthermore, he points out that it used the mouth to make them think it got stronger, but in reality, it's just a gimmick to give it time to recover. Fighting with deception wasn't entirely out of place for mimics. Alicia still points out that while it is true, it still regenerates quickly. Ariake agrees, saying that its regenerative abilities were the key to its weakness. If it uses a mouth to hide its damage, then perhaps if it's hit twice in the same spot, it won't be able to recover. Coming to that conclusion, Ariake tells them that the only way to attack it before it recovers is to use multi-strike, hitting it continuously until its energy runs out. While their damage output won't change, they'll still be able to hit repeatedly. Just then, the barrier begins to crack, and then finally, it shatters. The trio moved swiftly, dodging a tentacle that landed where they were standing. Ariake tells them that they have to defeat it before it destroys the whole dungeon. Ariake then buffs the girls and himself, giving Alicia lightning speed, Colette nimbleness, and himself multi-strike. With that, he faces the mimic, ready to finish the battle. The mimic bellows, shouting Ariake's name. But before it can attack, Colette deals 3 blows to it, causing one of its tentacles to fall off. Alicia hits it with her staff repeatedly, causing another to fall off as well. Ariake's plan was spot on. Ariake joins them too, and soon the 3 of them are hitting it repeatedly. Ariake tells the monster that since it's such a damaged sponge, they'll see what they can do about that. They continue to unleash a barrage of hits until finally, Ariake calls out that they're almost out of time. Alicia corrects him, saying they're just in time as, despite its best efforts, the mimic can't create or maintain any of its tentacles. However, just as they're about to finish it off, the mimic begins to run away while the trio chase after it. Outside, it looks around for people to devour so it can recover. But Ariake tells him that all the adventurers have already left, thanks to the beast folk it tortured. Alicia is worried that the mimic will escape, but Ariake anticipates this. He then tells Colette to go wild, and she transforms into her dragon form, ready to impart judgment on the hell mimic. Colette unleashes final fury on the mimic and it disintegrates into nothing, the attack leaving a giant crater in its wake. Colette then turns back to normal and falls to the ground, Ariake catching her as always. He's slightly annoyed that she didn't hold back, but Colette argues that it feels so good. Alicia runs towards Colette, astonished by her true form. She tells her how she was moved by how divine she was. She then mumbles that with Colette on the party, she has her work cut out for her, though Ariake notices that she seems upset. Alicia exclaims that the skill took a lot out of her. Colette is still happy that the battle was amazing and Alicia agrees, saying that it was all thanks to Ariake. He then tells him that that wasn't the case, as his skills are only as good as his allies, and that without them, they would have lost. Alicia sighs, saying that although the beast folk and townsfolk are still at odds, at least the adventurer killer has been dealt with. She then tells Ariake that she doesn't think Hainish acted alone, and must have been controlled by a mastermind. However, Colette isn't worried about such matters, telling them that they'll figure it out later, and they should enjoy the moment now that they've solved the case. Later at Olden town, when Ariake and the others return as heroes who defeated Hainish, the townsfolk give them a warm welcome. And although Ariake is grateful, he's desperate to find a way out. As he hides, Hao and Anne find him trying to escape the townsfolk, who are now frantically looking for him. The siblings know he's trying to run away from the town's hospitality. They both find it hard to believe that a party would be too much for a legendary hero. The siblings give him the Bell of Dawn, a bell which summons every member of their tribe to rush to assist him when rung. At first, Ariake attempts to reject the gift, but after much persuasion, he decides to keep it, telling them that they shouldn't expect him to use it though. Later, Alicia informs Ariake that she'll have to leave their party for a bit, because the church officials contacted her and they want to address her in person. He tells her that it sounds rough, to which she tells him that it's all his fault, since she has to go back to give thanks for what he did, and she has to give a face-to-face report as well. Ariake is confused about whether she's upset with him or not. She then tells him that they would like it if they came with her as well, so that they can best show their gratitude. With a scowl, he tells her that he would rather not. Alicia giggles, telling him that she knew he would say that, since he always hated standing out. Ariake is surprised, stating that it's been a while since he saw her so happy. She then leaves, telling him that she already told Colette. He tells Alicia to stay safe, causing her to blush. Suddenly, Fenrir, now in a humanoid form, appears beside Ariake. She then confirms his suspicions of a mastermind behind the incident that just occurred. She then kisses him, telling him that they'll meet again, and with that, she fades away. As they ride through the country, Colette points out that it feels like they have to plan an escape route. Ariake then announces that they're going to the marine city of Belta, since they'll need to cross the sea to reach Alti. Meanwhile, Ariake thinks to himself about the possible mastermind manipulating Heinrich. Not only that, but based on the other incidents like the withering of the elven forest and the Devil's Grove in the town of Medicine, and even when he saved Colette, it was as though someone was trying to spread the darkness. Later, on the road, Ariake is talking about how he took care of the hero party, when Colette spots some royal knights. The royal knights spot their wagon and make their way towards it, telling Ariake that they've been waiting for him, and that they're there to deliver a royal decree behalf of the Granheim Kingdom. They announce that he's to have an imperial duel with the hero, Harunoa Babia, in Belta 1 month from today. Colette wonders why they would want Ariake for that, and Ariake explains that the kingdoms usually do it to show everyone's strength, though he has a hunch as to the real reason. Colette tells him to ignore it and not let them boss him around. The knights try to protest, saying that they can't refuse a royal decree, but with a few threats and insults from Colette coupled with a death stare, they hold their tongues. Ariake, however, sees this as an opportunity to see how much they've grown in strength. Colette is slightly annoyed, saying that he's too kind. Thinking to himself, he's sure that they've made plenty of mistakes since he left, but that's the only way for them to truly grow, believing that's what they call parental love. Colette tells the knights that they should be grateful for Ariake's kindness, and Ariake tells them that they should inform the king that he has accepted the duel. At the Werdok mansion, Babia is shocked when he hears that he has to have an imperial duel with Ariake. The chancellor, while sipping tea, asks him if he'll accept. Chuckling, he was worried that the wine and food were just special treatment to force some awful task on him. He assures the chancellor that he'll win no contest. Delia chimes in, saying that she's enough to beat a small fry like Ariake. Elga adds that he's too soft and that he's severely lacking in muscle. Purada bites into some sweets, saying that she would like to put Ariake in his place. Suddenly, a young girl speaks up, asking them why they're being so carefree about the situation. She tells them that for someone like Ariake who saved Medicine Town from the Devil's Grove, they'll need to prepare. Babia then addresses the girl Lorelei and tells her that she's naive for believing in those rumors, stating that the town was saved by the kingdom's knights. He then looks at the chancellor for confirmation, who then tells him with a straight face that that was only a public statement. When Babia questions him, the chancellor decides that he mustn't say any more, since he respects his position. After a moment of silence, Purada insists that the adventurers only won because they were so strong, not because of Ariake, and that nobody who thought of it more than a second would fall for that rumor. Lorelei then tells them that if the rumors are true, then he did much more than support. However, Babia tells the girl to shut up and that rumors always exaggerate those kinds of things. Lorelei then states that she'll probably leave the party, and the other new member agrees with her. Delia explains that it's pointless, stating that they're under the kingdom's authority, so if they leave now, they'll be in huge debt from the damage claims and complaints. Hearing this, the girls are in despair, which amuses Delia and Purada. The Chancellor frankly tells them that the Imperial Duel is meant to raise their status as heroes, because as it stands, their reputation is not fitting of their role, even adding that some consider Ariake to be the true hero. He explains that if the public believes that the destruction only occurred because they were simply that strong, then the public views of them would change. Suddenly, Babia crushes the cup of wine in his hand, claiming that Ariake is weak and that he has no interest in matches where the results are obvious. However, he is willing to enact justice as a hero. He strongly believes that Ariake being a hero is only a lie he tells himself, and that he's only trying to get back at him for kicking him out of the party. He then tells the Chancellor that the Imperial duel sounds fun, and that he accepts. Although he's already sure of what the outcome will be. As the Chancellor stands up from his couch, he tells Babia that he looks forward to it. He then stops Babia and informs him that there's one more thing. He faces the door and addresses someone, telling them they can enter. A young boy holding a spear introduces himself to the hero party as Lacry Wardok, then explains that he wants Babia to take Lacry into his care and make him his disciple in the hero party, much to Babia's shock and disgust, wishing the boy were a girl. He then tells the Chancellor to get someone else to take care of him, but the Chancellor insists, saying that nobody else would be able to handle such a job, because Lacry wields the holy lance, Bryonak, and since Babia also wields a holy weapon, he was the only one he could entrust him to. With a hint of reluctance, Babia found himself escorting Lacry to the open field, commencing the training session for his disciple. Lacry, in a warm and thankful tone, began to express his gratitude, feeling honored to receive guidance from the hero himself. In response, Babia curtly requested Lacry to skip the excessive show of respect, impatiently desiring to speed up the training process. Lacry eagerly charges at Babia with his sword, but a slight swerve from Babia causes Lacry to miss his target, sending him tumbling to the ground. With unwavering determination, Lacry quickly picks himself up, declaring that he's just getting started and far from finished. He charges at Babia once more, who can't help but display an irritated expression, bracing for the expected attack as this pattern repeats. Not far away, the heroes' party, consisting of Elga, Delia, and Purata, are gathered around a table, engaged in a leisurely card game. Lorelei, in her usual fashion, can be heard nagging them about their choice to relax when they could be doing something more heroic. In a lighthearted tone, Delia fires back with a comical excuse, suggesting that they're actually taking a break and using it as a form of training. It's possible she's just trying to interject a bit of sarcasm into the conversation to keep the mood light. Lorelei takes a moment to remind the gang that in order to meet up with Ariake for the upcoming Imperial duel, they'll have to make the journey to the coastal city of Belta. However, their current activity seems to involve more playfulness than preparation. Purata, with an exasperated grunt, expresses her frustration with Lorelei's persistent seriousness. She can't quite grasp why everyone's making such a fuss about taking Ariake seriously as an opponent, herself not feeling quite ready to do so. Basta, always the voice of reason, reassures Lorelei that there's no need to stress herself out. They're all determined, and at least Lacry appears to be more down to earth about things. Lorelei, in response, admits that Lacry's calm demeanor actually worries her a bit. Meanwhile, in the training area, Lacry and Babia continue their training session. Lacry has somehow managed to lose his sword, which now rests hilt deep in the dirt. With a sheepish yet earnest expression, he declares his intention to retrieve it and get right back into the action. Babia's mind drifts back to the initial conversation he had with the Chancellor regarding Lacry. It was during that discussion that he learned about Lacry wielding the sacred sword, Bryonak, and the Chancellor had entrusted Babia with the crucial responsibility of training him as the hero he is. However, the Chancellor had also cautioned that over time, Lacry's power might surpass even that of the heroes. As Babia observes Lacry now, he can't help but find it hard to believe that such a scenario is even remotely possible. Lacry's movements are undeniably simple, slow, and quite obvious, which leaves Babia wondering how his power could ever exceed that of a seasoned hero. Babia gets irritated at recalling the conversation with the Chancellor. He decides he'll use Lacry as target practice, rough him up, and throw him out. Lacry innocently brings his spear back, and Babia, the jerk, uses the opportunity to switch to bullying. Lorelei steps in, quarreling at Babia for attacking Lacry without warning. Babia retorts that a real fighter can never let his guard down in a real battle. Lacry thanks Babia for teaching him that. He mentions he's ready to go on with the training, but Lorelei is worried he's pushing himself too hard. Babia intensifies the training. His plan is to knock Lacry out. He's a bit surprised that his first hit didn't do that already, but nothing a second hit can't take care of. He goes in, and Lacry stumbles, but gets back up. Babia notices that he deflected the hit with his spear, but Lorelei sees deeper than that. Lacry purposefully shifted the impact's trajectory using the waist armor to absorb the remaining damage, all of which he did in a split second. Babia starts to get riled up and intensifies the training even more. The other party members notice this and contemplate interfering. Lacry is soon on the floor, battered and coughing. Lorelei offers to heal him if he's hurt bad, while Babia boasts about his amazing technique. Lacry commends his teacher, saying he is amazing, and he, on the other hand, is the one too slow to catch up. Lacry goes into detail of how Babia first swung his sword downward, using the force to raise himself. Then, using that momentum and gravity, he crashed the sword downward. In conclusion, he learned a lot from Babia's gravity-defying technique. Lacry is still in the mood to praise, but inwardly, Babia can't believe the disciple was able to see through his technique, and notice things even Babia himself didn't notice. If Lacry had faster reflexes, then Babia's attack would have missed. Elga comments that truly Lacry's defense was impressive, and Purata and Delia wonder out loud just how possible it is that Lacry saw through Babia's technique. Now they begin to panic. For Delia, if Lacry does have a good eye and strong defense, then she could easily be replaced first. Then Babia would follow. Purata noticed he used his magic to aid his movement in battle, so in good time, she too could be replaced. Even Elga sees he can be replaced, as Lacry is also good at defense. The other members feel so threatened that they want to get rid of Lacry. Babia picks up on the aura and uses the opportunity to tell them to engage in battle. Babia covers his dark intentions under the ruse of wanting to see how strong Lacry truly is. Is he really strong enough to be part of the hero's party? They beat up Lacry, then Babia turns him into an errand boy. Lorelei chastises Babia, but her words fall on deaf ears as usual. Lacry states that he knows he's weak and he was only chosen recently to wield the holy sword, meaning he's still an amateur fighter. Lorelei tries to tell him otherwise, but everyone else's criticisms drown her out. Babia goes as far to say Lacry's sword is a mere accessory, to which the boy tries to defend. At the end, Babia claims he doesn't need someone who is defiant and worthless, and kicks Lacry out of the party. Lacry runs into the woods feeling defeated. He unknowingly steps into the turf of some bad guys, and they want his expensive-looking sword. He starts to back up and falls off the cliff. He quickly reasons he needs to escape as this might be enemy territory. He luckily has some healing potions Basta packed up to heal his wounds and keep him moving. Being chased by mountain bandits through their turf might seem like a hopeless situation for someone like him, but he's not going down without a fight. The bandits are hot on Lacry's trail, though they admit he's fast for a wounded guy. Lacry is hiding but can hear them. He hates the fact that he was careless enough to run into the bandits just when he'd found the village. He's exhausted and dizzy from the pain from his fall, and he has only one healing potion at his disposal. From their discussion, Lacry can hear that even more bandits are coming, and he realizes he has to heal up quickly. But before he can get his thoughts together, he's spotted by one of the bandits, who is very interested in his nice-looking sword. The bandit calls the attention of his peers, warning that Lacry is quick and fighting him from a distance is risky. He asks that they surround him so he has no escape route. They come in their numbers, 30 against one lad, and it appears Lacry doesn't stand a chance. This is where it's revealed that Lacry is actually a girl? Wow. The wielded of the Holy Lance was chosen from the Kelberg family, and was a cause for great joy. Lacry was chosen out of her brothers. Her father believed only a man should have been capable of wielding the sword, so from the day Lacry was chosen, she began being treated as a guy. They cut her hair and her dresses were replaced with armor. It was a proud moment for her as she is the youngest daughter of her family. The bandits chase after her and she promises she won't let them have her dear sword. If they need it so desperately, then they can get it over her dead body. She faces them in battle. Her strategy is to deflect their attacks if she can't block them. And if she can't deflect them, then she plans to not let any attack that slips cut too deep. As long as she avoids a fatal wound, she'll be fine. She makes the chief her target. Her goal is to use him as a shield. All efforts, though, seem to be in vain quickly, as Lacry is defeated and her sword is about to be stolen from her. One of the bandits lets her know that she put up a good fight, but now it's time to bounce. Just then, the hero of the day steps in, sending the bandits flying. He retrieves Lacry's sword without them knowing until it's too late. Lacry stares at her savior, mesmerized. He offers her a hand, helping her to her feet, then introduces himself as Ariake. He asks for her name, which she tells him. He then tells her that she can explain her misfortunes later, and the antidote he gave to her worked, so she should be mobile pretty soon. Wait, when did he give her an antidote? A bandit springs on them, wanting to claim the sword, but Ariake is quick enough to send the guy flying away. He crashes into the other bandits with a loud thud, and Lacry marvels at the fact that his punch had the strength of 10 in it. She asks if he combined multiple skills, and he admits that he did, wondering how she was able to see that. It's not over yet. One of the bandits captures Lacry and holds her hostage with a weapon. The bandit threatens to kill Lacry if Ariake makes a move. Lacry feels pitiful, to think Ariake saved her just to be captured yet again. Ariake puts two and two together and arrives at the fact that Lacry has a slow motion skill. She can see her enemy's attacks in slow motion, and that was how she was able to see he actually struck 10 times with a single attack. Ariake tells her to concentrate. Concentrate? Slow motion? It's a lot to take in. But once she does, she's able to free herself from the bandit and recover her sword. She gushes to Ariake about how it was like, having the bandit move in slow motion. She asks if her victory was through his assistance, and Ariake lets her know that she has a newly discovered power that works with her eyes. She just has to follow the enemy's movement with her lance when defending or evading. The bandits keep coming, but Lacry takes Ariake's advice to concentrate, which makes her able to see the enemy move much slower. She is then able to move precisely and decapitate the leader of the bandits. The rest of the bandits scurry away, and Ariake tells Lacry that he actually set traps that will capture all of them soon. His mission was to get rid of them, but they were so many, and it was easier having them in the same place rather than scattered around. He apologizes for getting her involved in his mission, but she's too mesmerized by the outcome of their encounter. He introduced her to her strength and taught her how to use it. If only she could become his apprentice. Lacry and Ariake are presented with a bountiful feast that makes one wonder, what's the celebration? The man who serves them expresses the feast is a gratitude for them taking care of the bandits. Lacry comments how there's so much food, but Ariake requests for 5 more servings of roasted boar. Talk about an Oliver Twist situation. Lacry expresses shock, asking if he really needs that many servings. Ariake then explains that he has friends that will be joining him, hence why he needed more food than they would easily finish off in one setting. Lacry marvels at companions that have such an appetite and comments that they sound amazing. They pick up their conversation. Lacry has brought Ariake up to date on her misfortune. Ariake is now aware that she too was kicked out of the heroes party. It's news to Lacry that Ariake was also kicked out. She just can't bring herself to understand why, as Ariake is quite an extraordinary person. She, on the other hand, is just a talentless poser that deserves to be kicked out. Ariake asks her if she really believes she's talentless, and she confirms, expressing it's how the other party members treated her. She insists that they're basically right because she couldn't prove otherwise, even when she was in the mountains and the bandits came. Her still standing is all thanks to Ariake coming in the nick of time. She concludes that it is expected, as the fact that she was chosen by the sword doesn't mean that she would automatically be skilled. Ariake tells her wielding the sword requires actual ability and is nothing without. When he first held her hand, he was surprised. Despite her delicate frame, she has so many calluses. He encourages her, saying it's proof of the effort she puts to compensate for her lack of experience. He takes her hand now and says that she's trying, which is so cool. And she doesn't back down from a fight, which is also cool. Even when she was surrounded by bandits and taken as a hostage, she still stood her ground. She chose to believe in him and fight. Her tenacity is the mark of an ultimate warrior. It makes him question her again why she feels so talentless when she is clearly not. She tears up thinking about her weakness that has tormented her for so long. She recalls all the side talk, people commenting about how weak she is for the chosen one. Plus, she has no special skills. Even though she was forced to struggle alone, rejected and scorned by everyone else, since she was the chosen one, she decided to follow her path, with no regrets attached. She became desperate to become stronger, and then Ariake came along and acknowledged her efforts. He called her a warrior. He showed that her efforts were never in vain. She continues to tear up, expressing gratitude to Ariake for his kindness. He tells her it's too early to cry, and she still has a lot of potential he still needs to help her unravel. He brings up the incident of her using her ability to tell how many skills Ariake used in his attack, aka the 10-in-1 punch. She waves it off as nothing, stating she only noticed the skill execution because of her slightly above dynamic vision. It's pointless, as she recalls feeling helpless when the other party members led by Babia attacked her earlier. The attack and the bullying that caused her to flee into the mountains in the first place. Ariake inquires more about Babia's attack, and she reports the one where his steps and strikes are like a dance. He uses the recoil of the first strike to attack with a diagonal strike. Ariake identifies the move as the Rondomir Waltz. It makes Lacry remember that indeed Ariake was once a member of the party. The Rondomir Waltz is apparently a complicated high-speed skill that's hard to comprehend for the average person. But Lacry is clearly not an average person, because she managed to understand it just by seeing it once. Their conversation is interrupted by Colette noisily and excitedly announcing her presence. True, she's always attached to Ariake, so it's strange that she's been MIA for a bit. She starts off by apologizing for leaving Ariake's side for so long, but Ariake has no need to worry as she's back. She then notices Lacry and screeches out a "Who is this?" Lacry remains polite, introducing herself, and Ariake helps out by saying Lacry helped him take out the mountain bandits. Lacry gushes that Ariake actually saved her life. Turns out Colette was only out for a short period, and she's impressed knowing her master was busy being a hero in her absence. Trust, though, that Colette's jealousy kicks in, and she's suspicious of the admiration Lacry has in her eyes towards her master. She decides to make her presence known, starting off by introducing herself back to Lacry. She dives into her royalty background, but is interrupted by the feast man, who has returned with the 5 servings of boar Ariake requested from earlier. Colette's attention is immediately diverted to the food Ariake had ordered just for her, and she digs in hungrily. Lacry can't help commenting just how cute and lively Colette is. After their meal, Ariake tells the girls that they need to pick up from where they left off. Lacry states that's fine, but she doesn't get why they needed to come such a large distance. Colette had a belly full and comments that she's sleepy. She's also curious about what exactly they're picking off. Ariake brings Colette up to speed about Lacry, so she knows they're out in this particular location to see Lacry's ability. Ariake expresses that he looks forward to seeing her ability firsthand, and asks Lacry to take the stage. Lacry is momentarily mesmerized that Ariake is eager to see her work with her lance. She announces she will show him her basic combat maneuvers, but he interrupts by saying what he really wants to see is the Rondemir Waltz skill. The same skill she only saw once, but she was able to swiftly memorize. Ariake asks Colette to be Lacry's sparring partner, and Colette agrees. She expresses her doubt of Lacry being able to recreate a skill she only saw once. Sounds like reckless behavior to her. Lacry clarifies that she can get the job done with her lance, but Colette is still in doubt. Lacry swings into action. There's a lot of crashing and slamming and whooshing, and soon Lacry is on her knees, complaining about her inability to match the speed of the hero. Ariake tells her that she's done quite well. Babia had to practice that same move for years, so her recreation was quite impressive. Watching her perform, though, made Ariake realize the other ability she possesses is Mirrored Mastery. Mirrored Mastery, the ability of picking up someone's habits and movements and learning both offensive and defensive techniques just by watching them. In other words, Lacry is good as copying, as Colette says. Ariake, however, argues that's not the whole picture. With that ability, Lacry can easily find weaknesses or openings in the opponent's techniques, and therefore devise the perfect countermeasure to attack. So technically, once she has seen an attack, she can never lose to it again. All that talk then opens Lacry's eyes to the fact that she is decent at evasion and defensive maneuvers. Her body instinctively responds to copying, and it's because of her kinetic vision. Although she could appear weak if she doesn't know how to use her ability offensively. To make a good use of her skill, she would need to incorporate it into her attacks. If her body instinctively dodges, then it can learn to be offensive. It would require training though. Lacry prostrates with gratitude at Ariake. She expresses how lost she felt after the hero abandoned her. But Ariake became a motivator, so she could become stronger, and she promises to work hard toward that. Ariake smiles, commending her spirit. He then offers that she join his party. Colette likes the idea of having a holy weapon on their side, as it's sure to come in handy. Plus, Colette looks forward to friendly competitions they could embark on for the sake of mutual growth. Lacry is excited, asking if this invitation means she'll become his disciple. He reminds her he's supposed to be retired, but if she desires it so much, then sure. Especially since she's the wielder of a holy sword. Since she's now a disciple, she would need to undergo training. To begin with, she would need to master her Mirrored Mastery skill. Ariake remarks her progress in the mountains is something to write home about, and there's no better way to train than actual combat. This leads Ariake to invite Lacry to join them in the Imperial Duel.